Chapter 1556. The sword light tore through the space and slashed toward the red-robed man. The speed was so fast that the red-robed man didn't even have time to react. The sword light instantly pierced the red-robed man's chest. Blood spurted out. The red-robed man's body shattered and turned into a cloud of blood mist. With one sword strike, the red-robed man immediately fell. Little 5. Who is it? Kill him. Seeing the red-robed man die, the rest of the Blood Tiger 5 sons looked in the direction of Chu Fengmian's attack. When they saw Chu Fengmian, they immediately attacked. How dare an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu meddle in the affairs of the Blood Tiger 5 sons? Go to hell. Suddenly, the other 4 people joined forces at the same time. Clusters of blood gushed out and immediately turned into a blood tiger, rushing toward Chu Fengmian. The blood tiger was formed by the 4 of them. Its strength was close to the peak of the 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. This was the unique skill of the Blood Tiger 5 sons. Although the Blood Tiger 5 sons were 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu, ordinary 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu didn't dare to fight with them. Not to mention that the Blood Tiger 5 sons were not 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Even if they were 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian wouldn't put them in his eyes. Chu Fengmian stood in place as he watched the Blood Tiger approach. His expression was incomparably relaxed. Suddenly, he waved his hand and directly grabbed the Blood Tiger. The ferocious Blood Tiger was shrouded by Chu Fengmian's claw and froze in the air. Then, Chu Fengmian exerted his strength. This Blood Tiger was withstanding a great amount of power and was immediately torn apart. Soon after, Chu Fengmian exerted force in his palm and blasted out a palm strike. The other 4 of the Blood Tiger 5 were hit in the chest. Under the power of this palm strike, they were killed on the spot. They exploded in the air and turned into clouds of blood mist. Chu Fengmian grabbed them, and the blood essence fell into his palm and turned into 4 blood pills. When Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng saw this, their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. They were almost scared to death. The Blood Tiger's 5 sons were notorious figures. Their strength was unquestionable. Although there were only 4 of them left, they were strong enough to fight against the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Even the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu would have to expend some effort to defeat the Blood Tiger 5 sons. But now, in front of Chu Fengmian, they were all killed with a wave of his hand. Looking at Chu Fengmian, who was even younger than them, standing in front of them, Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng were extremely shocked. Both of them were ancient emperors as well. Naturally, they could tell that Chu Fengmian was younger than them. The Blood Tiger 5 sons died just like that? Who is this person? He killed the Blood Tiger's 5 sons in one move. This kind of strength is simply standing at the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He's so young. Which force is he from? Not only the 2 from the Yanzhou mainland, but the other onlookers were also amazed when they saw Chu Fengmian kill the Blood Tiger's 5 sons in one move. With this kind of strength, he could not be a nobody. Chu Fengmian. This person is Chu Fengmian from the Holy Dragon sect. Suddenly, one of the Emperor Gu looked at Chu Fengmian, as if he recognized Chu Fengmian's identity. Chu Fengmian? Many of the martial artists present were unfamiliar with this name. Many of them were usually in seclusion. They only woke up and came to the 9 zones when they heard the news that the 9 zones were open. But there were also some who knew Chu Fengmian's background. Chu Fengmian? Isn't this person a newcomer from the Holy Dragon sect? In just a few months, a newcomer has become so strong? How is this possible? The disciples of the Holy Dragon sect are all monsters. But the other disciples of the Holy Dragon sect are not as monstrous as him. His strength is not below Qing Meng's. Sounds of discussion could be heard everywhere. Senior, thank you for saving us. Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng were stunned. After a while, they reacted and hurriedly thanked Chu Fengmian. No problem. Are the 2 of you from the Yanzhou continent? Chu Fengmian glanced at the 2 and asked, "What's your relationship with the Yan Emperor?" The two of us are from the Yanzhou continent. Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng looked at each other and said, "Don't worry. The two of us are the Yan Emperor's disciples. The Yan Emperor is our master." "Oh? The Yan Emperor's disciples? Then I didn't save the wrong people." Chu Fengmian could see that Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng were definitely related to the Yan Emperor. Since they were the Yan Emperor's disciples, Chu Fengmian did not save the wrong people. He glanced at Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng. With a move of his palm, the 4 blood pills flew to them. "Your master and I are good friends. Consider these 4 blood pills as a greeting gift." Seeing that Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng were hesitating, Chu Fengmian said with a smile, "Thank you, Senior Chu." The two of them knew Chu Fengmian's identity from the conversation just now. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, they did not hesitate and accepted the blood pills. The two of them had suffered serious injuries. The pure essence blood contained in the blood pills was just enough to help them recover from their injuries and make up for the lost essence blood. "Where's the Yan Emperor?" Chu Fengmian was about to ask about the Yan Emperor. Rumble. Suddenly, a surge of spiritual energy descended from the sky. It contained the rich power of heaven and earth. In the sky, it turned into blood clouds. A figure slowly appeared in the blood clouds. It was a middle-aged man. He was wearing a red robe with a blood dragon embroidered on it. He exuded a domineering and noble aura. He was definitely a big shot. "It's the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. Let's retreat. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu is here." Chu Fengmian killed the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu must be here to avenge the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. Upon hearing the name of the ancient Lord Bloody Tiger, the crowd that had retreated even further. No martialist dared to stay within a 10-mile radius. Clearly, the name of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was more frightening than the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. Who dares to kill the Blood Tiger's 5 sons? The moment the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu arrived, he smelled the stench of blood in the air. His face was filled with anger. Blood pills? Suddenly, the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu saw the blood pills in Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng's hands. The moment he saw them, he could not hold back his anger and exploded. He felt a familiar aura from the blood pills. Clearly, the Blood Tiger's 5 sons had been refined into blood pills. Die you 2 ants. Chapter 1557. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was enraged when he saw that the Blood Tiger 5 sons had been refined into blood pills. He launched a palm strike at the two from the Yanzhou continent. Boom! Surging blood qi condensed on the palm strike. It was so overwhelming that it seemed as if everything in the world would be destroyed by this strike. This, the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength, is close to that of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. The moment the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu made his move, the overwhelming aura caused everyone to gasp in surprise. The Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength had reached the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He was only a step away from the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He was invincible among the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. No one could defeat him unless he was faced with a genius like Little Emperor Yi or Little Emperor Jiu. Yan Mo and Yan Wufeng had no way of resisting Xuehong's attack. Their spiritual energy was completely suppressed. They couldn't even draw out the slightest bit of energy to defend themselves. They couldn't resist an ordinary 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu, let alone the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu, who was at the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. In the face of the enormous pressure, both of their faces were incomparably pale. At this moment, the pressure on their bodies suddenly disappeared. Chu Fengmian took a step forward and looked at the descending blood-red palm. He gathered spiritual energy in his palm and launched a palm strike. The palm strike was accompanied by the roar of dragons. It was as if the ancient Dragon Emperor had arrived. Rolling draconic aura appeared behind Chu Fengmian. Waves of spiritual energy turned into the shape of ancient dragons and circled around Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's aura was no weaker than the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's. Break! Chu Fengmian shouted. The power of his palm strike turned into the shadow of a giant dragon and slammed forward. It collided with the blood-red palm. The surging power shattered the blood-red palm into pieces. Not bad. When the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu saw Chu Fengmian make a move, his eyes were filled with astonishment. He could see that Chu Fengmian was also an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu, but he believed that he was already invincible among the 8 Tribulation Emperors. An ordinary 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu would be defeated in 3 moves if he fought with him. It would take a lot of effort to block one of his moves. But now Chu Fengmian was doing it so easily. He had underestimated Chu Fengmian. No wonder you dared to kill the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. You do have some strength, but today you will be buried with the Blood Tiger's 5 sons. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's eyes revealed a hint of ferocity. In an instant, a blood-red tiger appeared behind him. This blood-red tiger seemed to be the real body of Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu wasn't a martial artist, but a demon immortal. A demon immortal that was formed by a blood tiger. Although the ancient lord of the blood tiger had already condensed into a human body, he had still refined this blood tiger into an ultimate treasure spiritual weapon. When the blood tiger merged with the body of Blood Tiger Emperor Gu, Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength had more than doubled. What? Wasn't that Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's full strength? At the sight of this, many people in the crowd were stunned. Their eyes widened and their jaws dropped. The aura of the ancient Lord Blood Tiger's attack had left many of them breathless. Such terrifying strength was only a part of Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's strength was still hidden. So what if you have the Dragon Clan's bloodline? My bloodline is nobler than the Dragon Clan's. The Dragon Clan is just my prey. Blood Tiger rips the dragon. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu stared at Chu Fengmian and shouted coldly. He suddenly struck out with his claw. The power of this claw tore the surrounding space apart. The power of this move was enough to easily kill an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Even someone like Little Emperor Yi would have to retreat in the face of this claw. He didn't dare to take it head-on. Tearing a dragon? Prey? What a boastful tone. You're just a blood tiger, an ant. What a boastful tone. Hearing Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's words, Chu Fengmian sneered. Not to mention that Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was a peak 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Even if he had stepped into the 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be afraid. Spiritual energy gathered in Chu Fengmian's palm. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian struck out with his palm. The power of this strike was completely different from before. 129,600 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence gathered in the center of his palm. The first move of the primogenitor. Now that Chu Fengmian's bloodline was pure, the power of the 9 moves of the primogenitor was countless times stronger. The power of a complete bloodline was completely different from that of a partial bloodline. Even if Chu Fengmian lacked a drop of ancient battle dragon blood essence, the power he could unleash would be completely different from now. With an incomplete bloodline, the Dragon Clan's martial techniques would also be flawed. This was unavoidable. Once the bloodline was complete, Chu Fengmian would possess the power of an entire ancient battle dragon. The 9 moves of the primogenitor would be no different from a real Dragon Clan's martial technique. This strike contained the true essence of the Dragon Clan's martial technique. Destroy! Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. As he sneered, the power of the first move of the primogenitor swept across. The Blood Tiger Claw was destroyed in the air. It didn't even have the slightest resistance before it was destroyed in an instant. Immediately after, the power of the first move of the primogenitor swept across the horizon and targeted Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. How is this possible? What kind of power is this? Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was shocked. He believed that his power was already at the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He couldn't say that he was invincible. However, he was confident that even if he was facing a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, he would still have the ability to fight. However, in the face of Chu Fengmian's power, he felt that his power was like that of an ant. He didn't even have the power to resist. Die. Chu Fengmian glanced at Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. With this sentence, he announced Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's death sentence. No. Crack. The first move of the primogenitor swept across. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu's spiritual energy barrier was extremely fragile in the face of the first move of the primogenitor. It immediately shattered. Bang. There was a loud bang. Everyone stared blankly. Blood Tiger Emperor Gu exploded in the air under the palm of the first move of the primogenitor. Blood splattered everywhere. He was a figure at the peak of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. He even had the chance to challenge the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. But now, he was killed by Chu Fengmian so easily. Chapter 1558. The scene before them was even more shocking than when Chu Fengmian killed the Blood Tiger's 5 sons with a single move. Although there weren't many experts in the 9 domains who could kill the Blood Tiger's 5 sons with a single move, there were still a few. However, killing the Blood Tiger's 5 sons would inevitably offend the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. Therefore, even though the Blood Tiger's 5 sons were arrogant and despotic, no one dared to kill them because of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. This was enough to prove the strength of the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. In the Jiuyu star field, the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu was an incomparably veteran Emperor Gu. In particular, the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu had always been a lone wolf. Even the 4 major forces of the Jiuyu star field did not dare to provoke the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu. However, such a famous expert had been killed by Chu Fengmian as easily as chopping vegetables. This was simply beyond the knowledge of many people present. This is too terrifying. Chu Fengmian is so young. Could it be that he's going to become another Yun Zun? Countless people thought of another terrifying figure in the Holy Dragon sect, Yun Zun. Yun Zun had made his debut at a young age. He was invincible and left behind an eternal legend. Even after countless years, people were still talking about the former Supreme Cloud with gusto. The current Chu Fengmian was exactly the same as the legend of Yun Zun. No, even Yun Zun wasn't as monstrous as he was back then. When he joined the Holy Dragon sect, it was said that he wasn't even a quasi-emperor. Now, in less than a year, he has grown to such a heaven-defying level. Emperor Gu, who used to be in the same generation as Yun Zun, said softly. Could it be that this person has received a power inheritance? There's a unique power inheritance in the Holy Dragon's secret realm. Once it's received, it's almost comparable to the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu's strength. Another Emperor Gu said. Although the legacy of strength was also a secret in the Shenglong mystery ground, it wasn't much to the ancient emperor. Most of the Emperor Gu knew that there were power inheritances in some ancient forces. That's impossible. If this kid had received a power inheritance, there would have been news of it long ago. Furthermore, this person doesn't have the spiritual energy of others. It's impossible for him to have received a power inheritance. Emperor Gu, who had some understanding of power inheritance, shook his head and said, once one received the inheritance of power, one's body would definitely contain the power of the person who inherited the power. Little Emperor Yi, for example, would always have Yi Futian's power within him. Even after he'd received all of Yi Futian's power, he still couldn't erase Yi Futian's brand. This was the fate of power inheritance. However, Chu Fengmian didn't have the power of anyone else. Just this point alone was enough to prove that Chu Fengmian didn't receive any power inheritance. The fact that Chu Fengmian hadn't received any power inheritance meant that his current strength was obtained through his own fortuitous encounters and bitter cultivation. In less than a year, he had gone from being a quasi-emperor to having the strength to kill the 8th tribulation Emperor Gu. Such strength could be said to be heaven-defying. Throughout history there were countless monstrous geniuses who could not be compared to him. If this kid doesn't die prematurely, he'll definitely step into the celestial realm. Many Emperor Gu looked at Chu Fengmian. Their eyes flickered with all kinds of thoughts: greed, jealousy, envy, worship. Countless gazes of all kinds looked over. Chu Fengmian completely ignored their gazes. Even if there were a few hostile gazes, Chu Fengmian didn't care. Since he'd already displayed his strength, he wasn't afraid of others spying on him. On the other hand, Chu Fengmian just happened to lack essence blood to consolidate his realm. It couldn't be better if someone came to throw their lives away. Chu Fengmian looked up at the sky. The blood tiger Emperor Gu, who'd been blown up in midair, was still trying to reconstruct his body. He was struggling to escape from Chu Fengmian's hands. But how could Chu Fengmian give him such a chance? Chu Fengmian gently pointed his finger. The blood tiger Emperor Gu's newly reconstructed body let out a blood-curdling scream and was blown up. Immediately after, Chu Fengmian activated the sky-devouring secret technique and began to devour the essence blood of the blood tiger Emperor Gu. The bloodline of a demon god was more precious than the bloodline of an ancient martial artist. Therefore, the power contained in the essence blood of a demon god surpassed that of an ancient martial artist's essence blood. Moreover, the strength of the blood tiger Emperor Gu was close to the level of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. The essence blood of the blood tiger Emperor Gu was the most powerful among all the experts that Chu Fengmian had killed. The moment it was devoured, Chu Fengmian immediately felt an incomparably pure spiritual energy pouring into his body. This energy was scattered to every corner of Chu Fengmian's body and began to settle down, consolidating Chu Fengmian's realm. Great! Chu Fengmian suddenly opened his eyes. After devouring the essence blood of the blood tiger Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian's realm had been completely consolidated. The feeling of weakness caused by the previous breakthrough was completely swept away. Now, Chu Fengmian's realm was incomparably stable, and he could already break through to a higher level. Now that Chu Fengmian had reached the level of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, he could break through to the peak of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. However, increasing one's strength in the Emperor realm was countless times more difficult than stepping down the life and death step. It required a lot of resources. However, in the returning ruins heaven, in the Crimson Continent, the thing that Chu Fengmian lacked the least was treasures and resources. As long as he had the strength, Chu Fengmian could collect a large number of treasures and resources. Boom! At this moment, the 7-colored light in the sky suddenly became even more beautiful. For a moment the earth shook and the mountains shook. It felt as if the universe had been turned upside down. The surrounding mountains were also shaking. All of this originated from the palace behind the 7-colored light. The large treasure trove has opened. It was unknown who had shouted. At the bottom of the 7-colored light, a crack suddenly appeared on the ancient bronze door. The door slowly opened, revealing a deep abyss. The large treasure trove. Charge! This treasure trove is mine. No one is allowed to snatch it from me. Get lost. Whoever dares to snatch it from me will die. Countless people rushed towards the ancient bronze door as if they had gone crazy. The opening of the large treasure trove was a great opportunity, enough to attract a large number of masters. Now, these people had just witnessed the scene of Chu Fengmian killing the blood tiger Emperor Gu. The desire for power in their hearts became even more intense. The opening of the large treasure trove just happened to let out the desire in their hearts. The scene was incomparably crazy. For a moment, countless Emperor Gu attacked, bombarding the front of the ancient bronze door. Every move was a killing move, bombarding crazily to prevent others from entering. Chapter 1559. Under the joint attack of dozens of Emperor Gu, even an 8 tribulation Emperor Gu would find it difficult to forcefully pass through. If one was caught in it, the slightest carelessness would lead to one's death. Looks like there's no key to open this large treasure trove. Chu Fengmian thought to himself as he looked at the opening of the treasure trove. The colorful light above had already disappeared. Many of the large treasures opened on the Crimson Continent required the key to obtain the right to compete for them. However, the treasure trove in front of him had already opened and everyone could enter. Under such circumstances, whoever entered first would have the greatest chance to obtain the treasure. Let's go. Chu Fengmian's figure flashed. After observing for a while, he rushed towards the entrance of the treasure trove without any hesitation. The moment Chu Fengmian rushed over, he was immediately shrouded by countless martial technique. These warriors were now competing for the right to enter the treasure trove first. They would not let anyone pass. The moment Chu Fengmian rushed in, countless killing moves shrouded Chu Fengmian and bombarded him one after another. The power of the divine tree, bless me! Chu Fengmian shouted, and the shadow of the divine tree slowly condensed behind Chu Fengmian. All the killing moves that hit the shadow of the divine tree were immediately dissolved. Chu Fengmian's figure did not shrink back. He stared at the countless killing moves and rushed towards the entrance. Occasionally, a few martial techniques avoided the resistance of the divine tree. At the moment when they bombarded Chu Fengmian's body, a layer of flesh and blood crystals appeared on Chu Fengmian's body. A few martial techniques could not shake Chu Fengmian's body at all. In an instant, Chu Fengmian stepped into the bronze door. Oh no, someone has entered! Don't be in a stalemate here. Chase after him. Otherwise, none of us will get the treasure. Seeing Chu Fengmian rush into the bronze door, those warriors stopped being in a stalemate. They also knew that if they continued to be in a stalemate, they would only benefit Chu Fengmian. Countless warriors also rushed into the bronze door. A large treasure trove? Good stuff. Another large treasure trove has opened. Looks like I got here first. This treasure trove is mine. All of a sudden, a powerful aura descended from the skies, following which a figure rushed down. It was an old man. The moment he saw the gigantic treasure, his eyes were filled with incomparable excitement. A bunch of ants, get out of my way! Looking at the mess below, the old man suddenly attacked. With a wave of his hand, a punch that could shatter the heavens and shatter the earth shot out. Several Emperor Gu in front of him were killed on the spot. 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu. Retreat. 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu is coming. When the crowd saw the old man's attack, their expressions changed drastically. Many of them retreated one after another. In the current era, a half-step celestial realm expert was already extremely rare. The 9 tribulations Emperor Gu was an almost invincible figure who was extremely tyrannical. At least you know what's good for you. Seeing the crowd disperse, the old man stopped his killing. His figure flashed as he directly stepped into the bronze door. On the other side, Chu Fengmian had just stepped into the bronze door when he felt something else. After entering the bronze door, what appeared was not the palace that Chu Fengmian had seen from the outside. Instead, it was a bridge, a single bridge. Both sides of the bridge were filled with deep darkness. At the same time, Chu Fengmian felt an incomparably huge pressure the moment he stepped into the bridge. It was as if there were 2 huge mountains on his shoulders that were pressing down on Chu Fengmian. Although it was not much of an impact on Chu Fengmian's current strength, Chu Fengmian felt that the pressure on his body would become greater with every step he took. Is this the test of this large treasure trove? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. While he was thinking, his speed was constantly increasing. He was the first to step into the bronze door. Chu Fengmian must seize this opportunity. Faintly, Chu Fengmian sensed that the real treasure trove should be at the end of the bridge. The 129,600 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence on Chu Fengmian's body were all activated. In an instant, they transformed into the appearance of an ancient war dragon and rushed forward. The few warriors who had just followed Chu Fengmian into the bronze door were left far behind in an instant. The pressure here was enough to make it difficult for Emperor Gu to move. Many of the 7 tribulations Emperor Gu, who had just stepped into the bronze door, could only retreat because they had no strength to walk more than a few steps. In order to obtain the treasure trove, both opportunities and strength were indispensable. Entering the bronze door was a test of opportunity. In order to obtain the real treasure trove, one had to rely on strength. Boom! Just as Chu Fengmian continued to move forward, a surge of heaven and earth power suddenly shrouded the bridge. An expert had arrived. This kind of heaven and earth power was enough to affect the entire bridge. Only the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu could do this. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu has arrived. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed some coldness. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was his true opponent. Although there weren't that many 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu on the Crimson Continent, there were bound to be a few. In particular, the appearance of such a large treasure trove, which could be seen clearly from hundreds of miles away, would naturally attract the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. After this 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu arrived, he also activated his full strength and chased after Chu Fengmian. His speed wasn't any slower than Chu Fengmian's. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had entered the bronze door earlier than the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu and now had the upper hand. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu still had to spend some time to catch up with Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian's figure slowed down. He suddenly noticed that a palace had appeared in front of him. This palace wasn't at the end of the bridge, but at the center of the bridge. It stood there, and the gate of this palace was now tightly shut. One could still see many formation patterns engraved on the surface. However, many of the formation patterns on the surface were already broken, perhaps due to the passage of time. The power of the formation on the surface was already less than 20 or 30% of its original power. Chu Fengmian sized it up. His figure flashed and directly arrived in front of this palace. He gathered spiritual energy in the palm of his hand and suddenly attacked with a dragon claw. Break! Crack! As the dragon claw swept across, the formation patterns on the surface were broken. A gap opened on the ancient gate, revealing the interior of the palace. Inside this palace, a tree branch half the height of a human lay on it. As the ancient gate opened, an incomparably pure vitality was emitted from it. Chapter 1560. The vitality was so pure that it was unimaginable. It was even purer than Emperor Gu's vitality. Emperor Gu's injuries could be completely healed if he devoured the vitality. Even a mortal without any spiritual energy could live for hundreds or thousands of years if he absorbed just a little of it. In Chu Fengmian's memory, there was only one thing that could have such a pure vitality: the Builder Tree branch. The Builder Tree. Legend had it that the divine tree that split the heavens and earth apart was the foundation that supported the heavens and earth. It was said that the innate divine beasts were born from the divine tree. The vitality contained in the Builder Tree could even give birth to innate divine beasts. Its vitality had reached an unimaginable level. As a result, after tens of millions of years, the vitality contained in the countless branches of the Builder Tree still reached a terrifying level. When Chu Fengmian was in the divine power realm, he had obtained a Builder Tree branch. It was also because of this that Chu Fengmian was able to snatch the sapling of the divine tree from the ancient desolate sect's divine tree secret realm. It could be said that Chu Fengmian's current physical strength was related to the Builder Tree branch that he had obtained in the past. The Builder Tree branch that Chu Fengmian had obtained back then was only 3 inches long. However, the Builder Tree branch in front of him was 100 times larger than the one that Chu Fengmian had obtained. The vitality contained in it had also reached an unimaginable level. If Emperor Gu had obtained it and integrated it into his body, he would be able to recover instantly no matter how serious his injuries were. He would not lose any strength. Now, there was also a divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body that was of the same origin as the Builder Tree branch. Chu Fengmian could clearly feel the desire of the divine tree in his body. Such a large Builder Tree branch was enough to transform the power of the divine tree once again. Tear it apart. The moment Chu Fengmian saw the Builder Tree branch, he attacked at the same time. He gathered spiritual energy and blasted out a dragon claw. The dragon claw bombarded the cracks that had just been created, causing the cracks to widen. The doors of the palace were completely shattered. Chu Fengmian also stepped into the palace and sensed the builder tree branch at a close distance. When the builder tree shattered, a large number of builder tree branches were left behind. However, ordinary builder tree branches were only about 3 inches long. A branch that was half a person's height was extremely rare. The more complete the branch was, the more powerful the power it contained. Absorb! Chu Fengmian was shocked for a moment. He immediately grabbed the builder tree branch and prepared to absorb it to avoid any undue delay. Perhaps it was because Chu Fengmian had the God Tree, but the World Tree branch didn't resist Chu Fengmian. It immediately acknowledged allegiance and was absorbed into Chu Fengmian's palm. But before Chu Fengmian could rejoice, he suddenly felt a sense of danger in his mind. In an instant, Chu Fengmian could only temporarily put down the creation tree branch. His body retreated continuously, leaving behind a 5-colored blade where Chu Fengmian had been previously. If Chu Fengmian had hesitated for a moment, the 5-colored blade would have killed him on the spot. 5 Elements Divine Saber? People from the Avalon of 5 Elements? Chu Fengmian had seen the 5 Elements Divine Saber before, so he recognized it immediately. His gaze was incomparably cold. Chu Fengmian didn't even notice the existence of the person who had attacked before. This person's strength and realm were definitely above Chu Fengmian's. It must be a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu who had attacked. No matter how powerful an 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu was, it was impossible for him to launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian. Only a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu could do this. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw an old man standing not far away. In his palm, there was a 5 Elements Divine Saber condensed by spiritual power. Obviously, it was him who had suddenly attacked Chu Fengmian. He actually came so quickly. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. The old man's arrival was faster than Chu Fengmian had imagined. Originally, Chu Fengmian was prepared to take all the treasures in front of this person and leave immediately. Now, it seemed that this plan wouldn't work. Oh? You are indeed worthy of the young Heaven Master's attention. You do have some skills to be able to dodge my attack. While Chu Fengmian was thinking, the old man was also sizing up Chu Fengmian. When he saw that Chu Fengmian had dodged his attack, his eyes flashed with surprise. As a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, no one had expected him to launch a sneak attack on a junior. Now, Chu Fengmian was actually able to dodge it, which was beyond his imagination. It seems that the nearby Emperor Gu of the Avalon of 5 Elements died in your hands. The old man stared at Chu Fengmian and said with a somewhat cold tone. Yes, they were courting death. Chu Fengmian said coldly. Anyway, he had already fallen out with the Avalon of 5 Elements. There was nothing he couldn't admit. Courting death? Interesting. Junior, I think you are the one courting death. The old man's gaze became increasingly cold as he stared at Chu Fengmian. A wave of anger was brewing in his body. The moment the old man stared at Chu Fengmian, it was as if Chu Fengmian was being stared at by a hungry beast. The aura of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu alone was extremely oppressive. Warriors with unstable Dao hearts might be defeated by his aura before they even started fighting. Kneel. In an instant, this aura shrouded Chu Fengmian and enveloped him. A huge wave of pressure pressed down on Chu Fengmian, causing him to involuntarily feel a sense of fear. How dare an old man like you make me kneel? So what if you are Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations? I haven't killed Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations yet. Today, I will start with you. Chu Fengmian's gaze was extremely cold. Since today was the day and he couldn't avoid a fight, then he would fight. Chu Fengmian had always wanted to fight with Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations. Originally, Chu Fengmian's plan was to first obtain the treasures in the bronze door before dealing with this old man. But now, if he didn't kill this old man, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have the chance to get away to collect the treasures. In for a penny, in for a pound, he would kill this old man first. So what if he was Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations? After stepping into the Emperor realm, Chu Fengmian's strength was no longer any different from that of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Ancestors' first style. The dragons roared as spiritual energy condensed in Chu Fengmian's palm. With a loud roar, he slammed his palm down. Chapter 1561. Rumble. Chu Fengmian attacked without holding back. He activated the power of the ancient battle dragon bloodline to the extreme and gathered it in his palm. The claw blasted out like a real ancient war dragon. It was extremely ferocious. In the blink of an eye, it blasted towards the head of the old man. The power of the claw could tear the world apart. It was said that when Ancestor Tianlong attacked, his claw could tear the world apart. Although Chu Fengmian did not have the power of the ancient battle dragon, the power of his attack was similar to Ancestor Tianlong's. Ancestor Tianlong's bloodline? No wonder there is such a mysterious dragon clan martial technique. It seems that the sacred dragon's secret domain does have something left behind by Ancestor Tianlong. The old man saw Chu Fengmian's attack and instantly saw the mystery of Chu Fengmian's claw. He did not dare to be careless. He took a step forward and the blade in his hand flashed as he slashed at Chu Fengmian. The blade rotated and the power of the 5 elements gathered and merged into one. The power of the 5 elements originally belonged to the same origin. However, there were very few people who could combine the 5 elements. The old man's use of the power of the 5 elements had reached the peak. The aura on his body was 5 times stronger when he slashed out with his blade. A dazzling escape light slashed at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian did not retreat when he saw the blade light approaching. He attacked with the claw that contained the first move of the ancestor. The blade and the claw collided in the air. Rumble! The entire bridge shook at the moment of the collision. Countless warriors on the bridge felt the earth-shattering battle. The power of the battle between Chu Fengmian and the old man was almost no different from a battle between real experts of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu level. Every move was earth-shattering. Bam! At the moment of the clash, Chu Fengmian also felt an incomparably huge pressure rushing towards his body. Although the first move of the ancestor was enough to block most of the power of the 5 elements divine saber, a part of it still hit Chu Fengmian's body. However, the shadow of the divine tree condensed from Chu Fengmian's body and blocked all the power of the 5 elements divine saber. The power of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu is indeed different from that of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. This was also the first time he had truly fought with the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. The progenitor's first claw attack just now could easily kill an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian was confident that he could kill even Emperor Yi of the past, a genius who had received a power inheritance. However, in the face of Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations, the first move of the ancestor did not gain any advantage at all. Instead, a portion of its power was reflected back. The power of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was dozens of times greater than that of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian was astonished, but the old man was even more astonished. He had not held back at all in that slash. It could be said that he had used his full strength. In his opinion, even if Chu Fengmian didn't die just now, he should have been seriously injured. But now Chu Fengmian only retreated 2 or 3 steps. Although he had the upper hand, such an advantage was meaningless in a battle between powerhouses of this level. This also meant that Chu Fengmian had the power to stand on equal footing with him. The gap between the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu and the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was even greater than the gap between true emperors and Emperor Gu. For example, in the Sacred Dragon's secret realm, the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu was only a hall master and a supreme elder of the 4 sections. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, on the other hand, was a true upper echelon. The difference in status was enough to prove the difference in power. Both the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu and the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu were geniuses recorded in history. There were no exceptions. This person's aptitude is not inferior to the young Heaven Lord. If he continues to develop like this, he will definitely become the second Yunzun. Fortunately, he hasn't entered the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu yet. Otherwise, no one would be able to kill him by then. The elder's eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Chu Fengmian. Their current plan was to destroy the Avalon of 5 elements. Naturally, they wouldn't let Chu Fengmian become the second Yunzun. 5 elemental divine saber, extinguish life, exterminate. In an instant, the elder condensed his spiritual energy again and channeled it into the blade in his hand. He took a step forward, not giving Chu Fengmian a chance to breathe, and once again slashed towards Chu Fengmian. Once this saber was unleashed, it would extinguish life as its name suggested. The surrounding space was originally filled with vitality due to the existence of the creation tree branch. However, the moment he unleashed his saber, all of the vitality was annihilated by the blade. Under this saber, nothing was left alive and everything was destroyed. It was a killer move among killer moves. Good timing. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu is indeed capable. Chu Fengmian's gaze was incomparably cold. In the face of this saber, Chu Fengmian didn't shrink back. Sword light flickered in the World's Edge sword box on his back. Both the Ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword and the Titanic Godly Sword were unleashed. Facing the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian didn't intend to hide anything. With both swords in hand, Chu Fengmian's aura became countless times more ferocious. The sword essence of the Sword God Realm soared into the sky and shrouded Chu Fengmian's body. With a slash of his sword, he clashed with the blade in the air again. Boom, boom, boom. Countless vibrations resounded throughout the entire bridge. Even the martialists who had just entered the bronze door could clearly feel the collision of spiritual powers coming from the depths of the bridge. Chu Fengmian and the elder exchanged blows. Every move was meant to take the opponent's life and extinguish his vitality without holding back. Could it be that the 5 Elemental Saber Grandmaster is exchanging blows with someone? With this kind of vibration, could it be that there's a second Emperor Gu within the Bronze Gate? On the bridge, many cultivators had seen the old man enter. Naturally, they knew who could cause such a commotion. However, it was clear that there wasn't only one person involved in this confrontation of power. There was another person. Could it be that the person who could exchange blows with the 5 Elemental Saber Grandmaster is Chu Fengmian? That's impossible. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian is, he's still an Emperor Gu of the 8 Tribulations. How could he exchange blows with the 5 Elemental Saber Grandmaster? But who else could it be other than Chu Fengmian? Since Chu Fengmian could easily kill the Blood Tiger Emperor Gu, his strength is indeed close to the level of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. It should be him who's exchanging blows with the 5 Elemental Saber Grandmaster. Guesses were heard. Suddenly, there was another vibration at the Bronze Gate. A figure stepped into the Bronze Gate and stood on the bridge. The power of the universe suddenly descended from the sky. Another Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations. Let's go. When these Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations arrive, it'll be difficult for us to obtain the treasures within. A large number of warriors on the bridge exerted all their strength and walked towards the depths of the bridge. Chapter 1562. On the other side, the battle between Chu Fengmian and the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster had reached a stalemate. Bam! The saber and sword collided. The 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster was temporarily forced to retreat. However, the aura on his body was not disturbed at all. Even if Chu Fengmian used countless sword techniques, the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster would be able to deal with it. With both swords, Chu Fengmian had temporarily suppressed the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster and gained the upper hand. It was easy to suppress the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster, but it was extremely difficult to defeat him. Killing the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster was nearly impossible. Now, Chu Fengmian understood the difficulty of killing the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. It was 100 times more difficult than killing an 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Unless Chu Fengmian's strength improved, he would not be able to kill the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster. This stalemate is not the way to go. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. He no longer had the intention to continue fighting with the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster. If this stalemate continued, it would only drag on. If the treasures in this palace were obtained by others, it would be troublesome. Moreover, if this continued, it would also attract other 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian already found it difficult to deal with 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. If another one came, Chu Fengmian would have to think about how to escape unscathed instead of how to defeat him. Chu Fengmian was thinking about this. Suddenly, the power of heaven and earth descended. Chu Fengmian's expression changed abruptly. The arrival of the power of heaven and earth meant that another 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu had arrived at the bridge. It's the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu of Qi Linshan. This is troublesome. Chu Fengmian sensed the power of heaven and earth, and sensed the cultivation technique within. It was Qi Linshan's cultivation technique. The God's spying mirror also warned Chu Fengmian. Good, someone is indeed here. Boy, your end is here. The 5 Elements Saber Master shouted excitedly. At the same time, he sensed that someone had arrived and became extremely excited. Now, Qi Linshan, the Avalon of 5 Elements, and the vast ocean city had secretly joined forces. The arrival of Emperor Gu from Qilin Mountain was a great help to him. It was hard for him to kill Chu Fengmian alone, but with the addition of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, the situation was completely different. Now, all he had to do was to delay Chu Fengmian so that Chu Fengmian couldn't get away. When the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu of Qilin Mountain arrived, the two of them could join forces to kill him. 5 Elements Seal, Heaven and Earth Cage. The 5 Elements Saber Master made a grasping motion, and the power of the 5 Elements turned into 5 iron chains, surrounding Chu Fengmian from all directions. The 5 iron chains took root in the void and turned the surrounding space into a cage, trapping Chu Fengmian. The power of the 5 Elements permeated the cage. It was as if the 5 Elements Saber Master had used all his strength to turn the world into a cage. Not good. Chu Fengmian knew very well what the 5 Elements Patriarch was thinking. Now, Chu Fengmian could still deal with the 5 Elements Patriarch calmly. If the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu came, it would be very troublesome. Especially on this bridge, it was incomparably difficult to escape. Chu Fengmian could already feel that the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu of Qilin Mountain was approaching. In an instant, Chu Fengmian no longer hesitated. He suddenly pointed the sword in his hand to the sky. The stars in the sky seemed to be attracted at this moment, and the power of the stars condensed on the two swords. Tan Lang, Zhu Men, Lu Siyuan, Tianji. In an instant, 4 sword lights struck out at the same time. Then, the sword Qi turned into a river of stars, bombarding the cage formed by the 5 Elements iron chains. Chu Fengmian executed the first 4 moves of the 9 profound sword technique at the same time. After Chu Fengmian stepped into the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu, it was much easier for him to use the 9 profound sword technique. The 4 swords struck out at the same time, and the power of the river of stars condensed. Thousands of sword Qi bombarded the cage formed by the 5 Elements iron chains. Rumble! After a series of explosions, the cage formed by the 5 Elements iron chains was immediately broken, and the sword Qi swept out. One of the iron chains was the first to break. Then, a chain reaction occurred, and the other 4 iron chains broke at the same time. Immortal Technique. When the 5 Elements Saber Master saw the river of sword lights, the 2 words popped up in his mind. Only an immortal technique could unleash such power, and not a sword technique could do it. The power of the stars, the 9 profound immortal technique. The 9 profound celestial sovereigns cave dwelling was actually obtained by this kid? The 5 elements patriarch suddenly thought of the opening of the immortal burial continent. The biggest event of the opening of the immortal burial continent was the opening of the 9 profound celestial sovereigns cave dwelling. Emperor Gu of the Avalon of 5 elements had also entered the continent to snatch it, but in the end, all the Emperor Gu of the Avalon of 5 elements had been killed. No one had been able to leave alive. It had always been a mystery as to who had obtained the 9 mystic immortal venerables cave abode and the 9 mystic immortal arts. Today, Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship was displayed. The 5 elements patriarch immediately understood that it was definitely obtained by Chu Fengmian. Oh no, this kid is trying to escape. In an instant, the 5 elements patriarch woke up from his shock. He suddenly struck out a wave of spiritual energy, intending to strengthen the 5 elements cage. However, as the martial path iron chains broke, the 5 elements cage could no longer be stopped from collapsing. Chu Fengmian's figure immediately flew out of the 5 elements cage and rushed towards the direction of the palace. What's going on? 5 elements saber master? Who are you fighting with? Suddenly, a figure flew out from the bridge. It was a middle-aged man. His skin had a dark green color, which was completely different from an ordinary person. The middle-aged man emitted a strong spiritual energy from his body. His strength was no weaker than the 5 elements saber master. Ancestor Bai Luo, you've come at the right time. Let's join hands and kill this person. This person is Chu Fengmian of the Holy Dragon sect. The 5 elements saber master was overjoyed when he saw this person. This was the reinforcement he had been waiting for. The 9 tribulations Emperor Gu of the Qilin Mountain, ancestor Bai Luo. What? Chu Fengmian? The newcomer from the Holy Dragon sect? 8 tribulations Emperor Gu? How is this possible? Isn't this person Emperor Gu? Ancestor Bai Luo suddenly looked at Chu Fengmian when he heard the 5 elements patriarch's words. He sized up Chu Fengmian's realm and was suddenly shocked. The Avalon of 5 elements, the Qilin Mountain, and the vast ocean city planned to join forces to destroy the Holy Dragon's secret dimension and the Holy Dragon sect. Naturally, they had studied all the disciples of the Holy Dragon sect. He had also heard of Chu Fengmian's name. However, in his opinion, Chu Fengmian was only a quasi-emperor, so he did not take him seriously. Chapter 1563. But now, Chu Fengmian had stepped into the realm of 8 tribulation Emperor Gu. In just a few months, his strength had risen so quickly that it was beyond his imagination. Even ancestor Bai Luo, who had seen countless geniuses, was shocked. Chu Fengmian was an Emperor Gu who had stepped into 8 tribulation. Emperor Gu who had stepped into 7 tribulation Emperor Gu was already peerless. 8 tribulation Emperor Gu was already a legend. Such geniuses no longer existed in history, but in myth. Even Yun Zun, who was known as the #1 genius in the Daluo starfield, had stepped into the realm of a supreme Emperor Gu who had stepped into 7 tribulation Emperor Gu. Yun Zun alone was enough to make the 3 major forces feel extremely troubled. They dared to scheme against the Holy Dragon's secret realm and the Holy Dragon sect because Yun Zun hadn't appeared in the Holy Dragon sect for decades. Emperor Gu who had stepped into 8 tribulation Emperor Gu. Didn't that mean that Chu Fengmian might surpass Yun Zun in the future? Kill him! Ancestor Bai Luo stared at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian suddenly attacked. A wave of spiritual energy condensed in his palm. His figure flashed and immediately chased after Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had such terrifying aptitude. They couldn't allow him to leave alive. Chu Fengmian was still an 8 tribulation Emperor Gu and hadn't yet reached the peak. Once he became a 9 tribulation Emperor Gu, it would be extremely difficult for the 3 major forces to deal with him. Bai Luo Bamboo. With a thought, Forefather Jade Conch unleashed a palm strike. Emerald bamboos sprouted out of the ground and shot toward Chu Fengmian. The bamboo was sharper than a heaven-grade spiritual artifact. The slightest carelessness would pierce through it. It was like an inescapable net that surrounded Chu Fengmian. Pure yang heavenly fire. Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold when he saw the countless bamboo encirclement. A colorless flame condensed in his palm, and he pointed with his finger. The wisp of pure yang heavenly fire contaminated the emerald green bamboo and burned it into a sea of fire. Fire restrains wood. The most tyrannical of the 9 heavenly flames was the pure yang heavenly flame, which was the nemesis of these countless green bamboos. Although these green bamboos were tougher than heaven-grade spiritual weapons, they were still unable to resist the pure sun-sky fire. The countless bamboos that had besieged Chu Fengmian a moment ago were burned to ashes by the pure yang heavenly fire. Pure yang heavenly fire? Innate divine body? Surprise flashed across Ancestor Bai Luo's eyes. He had naturally heard of the most domineering pure yang heavenly fire among the 9 heavenly fires. However, this kind of flame was not something that could be controlled by a martial artist. Only a celestial being could possibly control it. It was obvious that Chu Fengmian had yet to reach the celestial realm, but he was able to control pure yang heavenly fire. This must be the power of an innate divine body. 5 elements saber ancestor, what are you waiting for? Forefather Bai Luo let out a long cry. Chu Fengmian possessed the pure yang heavenly fire, which restrained most of his power. It was almost impossible for him to kill Chu Fengmian alone. Divine saber destroys the world. Before Forefather Bai Luo's voice died away, 5 elements saber ancestor had already arrived in the sky above Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, he slashed his saber at Chu Fengmian. This slash was incomparably tyrannical and contained the power to destroy the world. With this slash, the heavens and earth would be destroyed. This was his trump card. It descended from the sky and slashed at Chu Fengmian. Do you think I'm unprepared? Sword out. Swoosh. Hundreds of sword chi flew out from the world-edge sword case on Chu Fengmian's back. They intertwined in the air and formed a sword formation. It resisted the slash of the world-edge saber. The world-edge saber bombarded the sword formation. The sword formation was shattered bit by bit, but the saber radiance of the saber was also shattered. Boom! As the battle took place, another powerful force of the heavens and earth descended upon the place. Another Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations had arrived behind the bronze gate. The news of the opening of this large treasure trove had probably spread. The surrounding Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations were all rushing here. If this continued, more and more Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations would arrive. Although this Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations was not from the 3 major powers, there would still be a 3rd Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations who would arrive. But there would always be another Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations from the 3 major powers. Chu Fengmian was already having a hard time fighting 1 against 2. Now that he was fighting 1 against 3, he had no chance to escape unscathed. Once he was delayed here, Chu Fengmian would be finished. Don't waste time with them. 3 suns. Boom! A wisp of flame condensed on the blade of Chu Fengmian's sword. At the same time, the sword intent of the sword god realm condensed on the blade. 3 suns blazing sword. The invincible sword technique of the number 1 sword emperor. It was also the strongest move among the thousands of sword techniques of Chu Fengmian's 9 realms sword technique. Retreat, Forefather Bai Luo. The 5 elements saber master saw the power contained in the sword and hurriedly retreated. He had fought with Chu Fengmian for a long time, so he naturally knew that Chu Fengmian's strength was no different from that of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian's opportunities, spiritual weapons, and sword techniques were even more mysterious than those of the real Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations. That was why Chu Fengmian could fight 1 against 2. Even he did not dare to take the power of this sword head-on. Forefather Bai Luo was also aware of this. He took a step back and condensed his spiritual power. Boom! The power on the blade was accumulated to the extreme. Raging flames incinerate the sky. The sword swept across, but what it contained was not sword chi, but fire. A sea of fire formed by the pure yang heavenly flame swept across the entire sky. When the three suns blazing sword was at its peak, it could destroy millions of wild beasts. Although Chu Fengmian's three suns blazing sword was not as powerful, Chu Fengmian had the divine body of ice and fire, so his control of fire was incomparably mysterious. His slash was a lot scarier than ordinary immortal arts. The five elements Saber Ancestor and Progenitor by Luo unleashed their trump cards, which turned into barriers to resist the impact of the sea of flames. Now is the time. Let's go. After Chu Fengmian displayed the three suns blazing sword, he turned around and flew toward the palace without looking back. Although the three suns blazing sword's power was incomparably domineering and comparable to immortal techniques, it was impossible to kill two Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations in one blow. The 9 tribulations Emperor Gu were all geniuses who had countless fortuitous encounters. Even if they did not have immortal techniques, they must have obtained countless mysterious life-saving methods. This move was only to delay. Chu Fengmian's real goal was to leave first and get the treasure at the end of the bridge. Chu Fengmian's figure flashed and he stepped into the palace. He looked at the builder tree branch and suddenly reached out to grab it. Chapter 1564. The builder tree branch was very useful to the divine tree. It could even transform the divine tree. Chu Fengmian couldn't give it up. However, in the instant that Chu Fengmian made his move, countless green bamboos suddenly sprouted out of the ground. Each and every one of them was like a spear that pierced towards Chu Fengmian. Some of the bamboos pierced into Chu Fengmian's body. His flesh and blood crystals trembled under the impact of the bamboos. I can only buy so much time? Chu Fengmian turned his head. The 5 elements Saber Master and Ancestor by Luo had already blocked the 3 suns' flaming sword and were chasing after him. Chu Fengmian's 3 suns' flaming sword was neutralized by the 2 in just a few breaths' time. The builder tree branch? Ancestor by Luo approached the palace and saw the builder tree branch. His eyes were filled with joy. He cultivated a pure wood elemental cultivation method. The builder tree branch could be said to be the ancestor of all trees. Such a huge branch was undoubtedly a supreme treasure for him. Boy, you still want to take the builder tree branch? Today, you and the builder tree branch will stay here together. Ancestor by Luo stared at Chu Fengmian and sneered. He waved his hand. Bamboos grew one after another beside Chu Fengmian, separating him from the creation tree branch. Tens of thousands of green bamboos surrounded Chu Fengmian like a cage, trapping him. Damn it! Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with anger. He originally wanted to delay the 2 and give him a chance to take the builder tree branch. But now, it was almost impossible to take the builder tree branch in front of the 2 and escape unscathed. If he wanted to leave now, he would have to give up the builder tree branch. Go! Chu Fengmian made a decision in an instant. He threw down the builder tree branch and his figure flashed. A layer of pure yang heavenly fire burned beside him. The bamboos around him were burned by the pure yang heavenly fire and became extremely fragile. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and swept out his spiritual energy, opening up a gap. Then, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly flew in the direction of the gap. Brat, no matter how you run, you will die here today. The 5 elements Saber Master looked in the direction where Chu Fengmian was about to fly out and sneered. The saber in his hand had already accumulated power. The moment Chu Fengmian broke through the bamboo barrier, the blade moved and slashed towards Chu Fengmian's throat. Tianlong transformation. Chu Fengmian's expression was incomparably calm in the face of the incoming blade. If Chu Fengmian wanted to take away the builder tree branch, it would be extremely difficult. However, Chu Fengmian wanted to escape alone. It was impossible for the 2 of them to keep Chu Fengmian here. The power of Chu Fengmian's progenitor Tianlong's bloodline was fully activated. The Five Elements patriarch sneered as he watched the blade approach Chu Fengmian. Even if Chu Fengmian didn't die, he would be seriously injured. It was only a matter of time before he was surrounded by the two of them. However, when the blade was less than 3 inches away from Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly disappeared. Without a sound, he disappeared from the bridge. Even the Five Elements Saber Master and Ancestor by Luo were shocked. They didn't see Chu Fengmian's escape light at all. This brat actually escaped? The Five Elements Saber Master's expression was somewhat ugly. In his opinion, this was a good opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian, but he didn't expect Chu Fengmian to escape unscathed. Ancestor by Luo closed his eyes tightly as if he was activating a technique. After a long time, he slowly opened his eyes and said, "No, this brat is not on the bridge. No, that person is still on this bridge. He hasn't left yet. Instead, he's heading towards the depth. Come, let's chase after him. This brat definitely won't be able to use this kind of secret technique a second time. This bridge should be a dead end. Let's chase after him. This brat won't be able to escape." Ancestor by Luo said as he collected the creation tree branch in the palace. His figure flashed as he chased after Chu Fengmian. In the depths of the bridge, Chu Fengmian's escape light was pushed to the extreme as he flew towards the end of the bridge. This time, I didn't get the creation tree branch. Chu Fengmian's eyes were incomparably cold. Chu Fengmian didn't suffer any losses in the fight with Ancestor by Luo and the Five Elements Saber Master. However, he didn't get the creation tree branch in the end, which made him somewhat vexed. Obtaining the creation tree branch was definitely enough to strengthen the power of the divine tree. The divine tree had already merged with Chu Fengmian. The stronger the divine tree's power, the stronger Chu Fengmian's power would be. A creation tree branch that was half the size of a human was extremely rare. At least in the history of the 9 regions, such a large branch hadn't appeared for tens of thousands of years. I'll find an opportunity to kill Ancestor by Luo and get the creation tree branch again. Chu Fengmian's spiritual consciousness had also seen the scene of Ancestor by Luo collecting the creation tree branch. After all, the creation tree branch was a part of the world's #1 divine tree. It wasn't easy to refine it. Chu Fengmian had once arranged an extremely complicated sacred sacrifice in order to refine the 3-inch creation tree branch. In the end, he had succeeded. Now, the difficulty of refining the creation tree branch that was half the size of a human was thousands of times more difficult than the 3-inch creation tree branch. Even though Ancestor by Luo was a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, refining the creation tree branch wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. He would need to use countless methods to accomplish it. Therefore, it didn't matter that the creation tree branch was temporarily in Ancestor by Luo's hands. As long as Chu Fengmian obtained the treasure at the end of the bridge, his strength would improve. Even if Ancestor by Luo and the Five Elements Saber Master were together, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could kill him and take back the creation tree branch. As Chu Fengmian pondered, the conveyance light continued to fly towards the depths of the bridge. Chu Fengmian had flown for thousands of miles, but he still hadn't reached the end. The deeper he flew, the more pressure he felt. The pressure on Chu Fengmian's body was also extremely great. The current pressure was enough to make a 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu breathless. Even walking would be extremely difficult for a 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu, let alone flying. As for 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu and 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, although they could use the conveyance light, the speed of the conveyance light would be reduced by dozens or hundreds of times under this pressure. Chapter 1565. However, in comparison, the impact on Chu Fengmian was much smaller. Firstly, Chu Fengmian's physical body was extremely heaven-defying. This pressure was borne on Chu Fengmian's physical body, so he didn't need to expend spiritual energy to resist it. Secondly, Chu Fengmian possessed the bloodline of primogenitor Tianlong. Hence, his technique of channeling light was even more mysterious. Hence, his speed was only slightly slower. Behind him, Ancestor Bai Luo and the Five Elements Saber Master did not possess such technique. The two of them were also flying towards the depths of the bridge. However, their speed of channeling light had been reduced by 90%. After a round trip, the two of them had been completely left behind by Chu Fengmian. I've already flown 3,000 kilometers. Chu Fengmian looked around. It was still the same familiar darkness. He could not help but mumble to himself. He had already flown 3,000 kilometers. In the outside world, 3,000 kilometers was not worth mentioning to Emperor Gu. After all, on this bridge, not to mention flying, every step consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Even Chu Fengmian could not withstand it if he did not have the divine pulse. Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy was stronger than that of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. It could be said that without the divine pulse, the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu would not be able to fly so far in one breath. However, Chu Fengmian was also clear that this bridge was actually a test. Many of these large treasures were deliberately left behind by some experts in the past in order to pass down their legacies. Just like in the cave of the 9 mystic celestial venerable, one had to pass through the 21st floor of the Tongtian Tower in order to obtain the treasures of the 9 mystic celestial venerable. It was the same for this bridge. Only by passing through the bridge and reaching the end could one be considered to have passed the test. Chu Fengmian flew all the way and looked ahead. Suddenly, another palace slowly appeared in front of him. This was a palace. It was still not the end. Just like before, it was a palace that stood on top of the bridge. The gate of this palace was still closed. The restriction on the gate had already decayed. Break! Chu Fengmian glanced at it. He gathered spiritual energy in his palm and struck it with his palm. There was a loud boom. The forbidding formations on the entrance of the palace were all broken. The entrance collapsed, revealing the interior of the palace. In the middle of the empty spot was another purple stone. On this purple stone there were golden spots that looked like stars. Purple Star Stone. Chu Fengmian glanced at the purple stone and his eyes flashed with joy. The purple star stone was a kind of refining material. Among the countless refining materials, it was considered to be of the highest quality. It was even said that when refining extreme Dao immortal weapons, some people would add purple star stones. If he could find a grandmaster blacksmith, with the help of the purple star stone and a few other refining materials, he might be able to refine an extreme-grade celestial weapon. However, in the current era, there were no master craftsmen who could refine an extreme immortal weapon. The most basic requirement to refine an extreme path celestial weapon was to be an expert above the celestial realm. Without becoming a celestial, how could he understand the power of a celestial? In the current era, even a celestial realm expert could not be found, let alone a celestial realm grandmaster blacksmith. If Chu Fengmian were to refine the purple star stone, he could at most refine a spiritual sword on the level of the ancestral dragon supreme sword. Now that Chu Fengmian had the ancestral dragon supreme sword and the titanic godly sword, he naturally did not lack spiritual swords. However, the purple star stone was a rare treasure. It seemed that the previous owner of this large treasure trove was also a peerless expert with a strong background. These 2 palaces should have been deliberately left behind by the owner of this large treasure trove. He should be able to obtain the treasures in the palaces by passing part of the test on this bridge. With a thought, Chu Fengmian clawed his hand and the purple star stone fell into his palm. He then put it away in his spatial ring. Chu Fengmian kept the purple star stone. If one day he really found a grandmaster blacksmith who could refine an extreme-grade celestial weapon, he could use the purple star stone to refine a new extreme-grade celestial weapon. Chu Fengmian put away the purple star stone and flew toward the depths of the bridge in a flash. If there was a first and a second palace like this, there would definitely be a third. Almost every treasure in this palace was enough to make the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, and even experts who were half a step away from the celestial realm fight to the death for it. According to the records in the ancient books, even experts who had stepped into the celestial realm did not have an extreme-grade celestial weapon. Experts who could have an extreme-grade celestial weapon were extremely tyrannical existences in the celestial realm. The value of the Purple Star River was even higher than the creation wood branch that was half a man's height. However, for Chu Fengmian, the creation wood branch that was half a man's height was more useful to him. If the Purple Star Stone was not refined into a spiritual weapon, it was just a material and would not be of any help to Chu Fengmian's strength. As for the creation wood branch that was half a man's height, once it fell into Chu Fengmian's hands, it could be integrated into the divine tree and increase Chu Fengmian's strength. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a bit of killing intent. The 5 Elements Saber Master and Ancestor by Luo had ruined Chu Fengmian's plan and even besieged him. Chu Fengmian would settle the score with them sooner or later. Let's go. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered and turned into a ray of light, flying deeper into the bridge. The treasures in this palace should be the treasures obtained after passing a part of the test of the bridge. Just passing a part of the test was enough to obtain so many treasures. Chu Fengmian could not imagine how rich the real treasures would be if he passed all the tests of the bridge. As long as there were a few treasures that were comparable to the creation wood branch, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could kill the 5 Elements Saber Master and Ancestor by Luo. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian's ray of light continued to fly. However, after passing the test of the 3,000 miles, Chu Fengmian clearly felt that the pressure around him had become even greater. The pressure on Chu Fengmian's body reduced the speed of Chu Fengmian's escape light by 10 times, less than 1/10 of its previous speed. This was the result of Chu Fengmian's incomparably strong physical body and the bloodline of primogenitor Tianlong. If Ancestor by Luo, the 5 Elements Saber Master and the others came, his speed would be reduced by dozens of times. It was impossible for Chu Fengmian to travel 1,000 miles in an instant. Every time Chu Fengmian's figure flickered, he could only fly a few dozen miles forward. The difficulty of this test is no less than that of the 9 mystic immortal venerables cave dwelling. Who exactly left behind such a large treasure? Why would there be such a difficult test? Chapter 1566. Chu Fengmian pondered while paying attention to his surroundings. He had already discovered that the darkness around him had already disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a screen of light. Chu Fengmian tentatively reached out his hand to touch it, only to discover that the other side of the light curtain led to another place. Could it be that I've completed the test of the bridge here? The other side of the light screen should be the place where the treasure is and I can get the reward. Chu Fengmian observed for a while and suddenly gathered his spiritual consciousness and penetrated it. The light screen was not only able to block sight, but also spiritual consciousness. It was as if someone had drawn an array to block it. However, the array had been there for countless years and its power was not even 1/10 of its original. Chu Fengmian activated his spiritual consciousness and penetrated the light screen. Behind the light screen was a palace. Inside the palace, there was a dazzling array of sacred elixirs and sacred elixirs. Behind each light screen, there were different treasures. However, behind the light curtain was an enormous formation, which separated the light curtain from the bridge. As long as one could pass through the light screen, he could enter the palace and get the treasure. However, if they did that, then the cultivators who entered the light screen would not have a second chance to enter the bridge. This was a choice. He could enter and get the treasure. However, once he got the treasure, he could not go any further and could only leave the large treasure. Everyone only had one chance to get the treasure. Chu Fengmian was not surprised when he saw this. Generally, in such a large treasure, not only one person could get the treasure. Although the most important and precious treasure would definitely belong to one person, the other cultivators who entered would still have a chance to get a share of the soup. For example, in the 9 mystic celestial sovereigns' cave, as long as one passed the level in the martial pagoda, one could get the corresponding reward. However, the real treasure of the 9 mystic celestial sovereign could only be obtained by those who passed the 21st level of the martial pagoda. Now, Chu Fengmian only needed to move his body to pass through the light screen and obtain the treasure. However, Chu Fengmian's target was the treasure in the deepest part of the large treasure trove. Although these treasures were good, Chu Fengmian was still far from reaching the end. If a martial artist came here and didn't have the strength to take another step forward, then it would be a good idea to collect a portion of the treasures. However, it wasn't that easy to collect these treasures. Even Emperor Gu, who was at the peak of the 8th tribulation, wouldn't be able to set foot in Chu Fengmian's vicinity. Only the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had the confidence to step into this place. Without strength, even if a cultivator came to this large treasure trove, they would only end up empty-handed. Therefore, this kind of large-scale treasure trove had always relied on luck and strength. Neither could be missing. Entering it was luck, but in order to obtain the treasure, one had to rely on strength in the end. Chu Fengmian's escape light continued to travel through the bridge. Pieces of light screens were left behind by Chu Fengmian. Many of the treasures behind these light screens were enough to make many 9 tribulations Emperor Gu go crazy. If a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu obtained one of these treasures, it would be enough to increase his strength by 20 to 30%. It was definitely a supreme treasure. Obtaining one of these supreme treasures was enough to match a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu's hundreds to thousands of years of cultivation. However, Chu Fengmian ignored them completely and didn't care at all. His target was only the treasure trove at the end of this bridge. 5,000 miles. It took him 4 to 6 hours to move forward another 2,000 miles. In front of Chu Fengmian, another illusory palace slowly appeared. Chu Fengmian approached step by step, and the palace finally solidified. The palace in front of him was exactly the same as the 2 palaces Chu Fengmian saw before. The restrictions on it were also badly decayed. Chu Fengmian was already familiar with this. A stream of spiritual energy condensed in Chu Fengmian's palm, and he immediately struck it with his palm. Boom! The closed door of the palace was shattered on the spot, and the treasure inside the palace was revealed. Only this time, it was neither a heavenly wonder nor a material, but an ancient book. A martial technique? Chu Fengmian's eyes lit up. He didn't lack spiritual weapons now. What was most useful to Chu Fengmian now wasn't a heavenly wonder like the branch of the creation tree, nor was it a divine elixir used to increase his strength, but a sword technique. The most important part of Chu Fengmian's strength was the 9 regions sword technique that he created himself. If Chu Fengmian obtained a powerful sword technique and integrated it into the 9 regions sword technique, his strength would also increase crazily. Especially in this large treasure trove, the treasures left behind were all supreme treasures that were of great use to the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. A sword technique left behind by an expert of this level was absolutely extraordinary. If this martial technique was a sword technique, it would be of great use to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian looked forward to it as he took a step forward and grabbed the ancient book. There was still a remnant of spiritual energy on the ancient book. Sensing that Chu Fengmian wanted to grab it, the spiritual energy suddenly emerged and turned into a barrier, ready to stop Chu Fengmian. You want to resist with an ancient book. Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold and his face became angry. A dragon's power shrouded down. After Chu Fengmian condensed all 129,600 drops of ancient war dragon bloodline, the dragon's power in his body was now extremely pure. In particular, Chu Fengmian still had the bloodline of the ancestor of all dragons, Tianlong. The dragon's power in his body was more terrifying than the dragon's power of a real ancient war dragon. Under the suppression, the layer of spiritual energy that emerged on the ancient book was shattered on the spot. Immediately, Chu Fengmian reached out and the ancient book fell into the palm of his hand. As Chu Fengmian grasped the ancient book in his hand, he could feel the pure martial intent within it. It's not a sword technique. Feeling the martial intent, Chu Fengmian shook his head with slight disappointment. Since it was a martial intent and not a sword technique, this ancient book was most likely a fist technique manual. For Chu Fengmian, it was not very useful. However, he still opened the ancient book. The moment he opened the ancient book, the martial intent suddenly turned into a lion and soared into the sky. This power was extremely tyrannical. Chapter 1567. Its aura alone was comparable to that of a peak 8 tribulation Emperor Gu. Just by opening the ancient book, it already possessed such a terrifying aura. Moreover, this was an ancient book. After the passage of time, the power contained in it had already been reduced by more than half. The lion was like a beast that had been suppressed in the ancient book. As the ancient book was opened, the seal was undone and it soared into the sky, trying to escape. Trying to escape? Chu Fengmian could tell that the lion was a part of the ancient book. However, for some reason, it had taken form and was trying to escape. The lion was still formed by its aura. However, if it was given a few thousand years, it might really become a real lion and turn into a living creature. Chu Fengmian let out a cold roar. He gathered the power of the battle dragon bloodline in his palm and executed the first form of the primogenitor ancestor. The lion was shattered into pieces after receiving the power of the palm. It gradually turned into 4 words and fell into the ancient book. The lion, whose strength was comparable to the peak 8 tribulation Emperor Gu, was formed by 4 words. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with astonishment. He originally thought that this lion should be an existence similar to the soul of some demonic beast sealed in this ancient book. He did not expect it to be formed by 4 words. The ancient books did have records of characters taking form. It was said that there was once an expert known as the art saint. That person would draw with his hands. Before the ink was dry, the image in the painting would appear and take the shape of a figure. Some ancient paintings also had records of the scroll turning into a beast. He did not expect the words in the ancient book to be able to take form. The lion that had just run out was close to becoming a beast. Chu Fengmian glanced at the ancient book in astonishment. The lion formed by the 4 words lost its power after being shattered by Chu Fengmian. It fell into the ancient book and immediately appeared. The 4 words, Lion Tyrant of the Boundless. They appeared on the first page of the ancient book. The 4 words were extremely ancient words of the 9 domains. They were at least a few 100,000 years old. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian was familiar with the ancient books of the 9 domains. Lion Tyrant Boundless. Could this be the tyrannical lion martial ancestor's cave? Chu Fengmian recalled these words in his mind. Suddenly, a name appeared in his mind. Martial Progenitor Tyrant Lion. Martial Progenitor Tyrannical Lion, a legend among the 9 domain beast gods, was said to be an ordinary lion progenitor. Later on, with his shocking comprehension, he created the lion ancestor's martial Tao and was known as the martial ancestor. The title of martial ancestor was something that only martial cultivators who had reached the great mastery of the martial way were qualified to be called martial ancestors. On the other hand, the god beast did not belong to this category. However, the martial path that the tyrannical lion progenitor had created had reached the peak, surpassing countless martial highnesses. Thus, no one dared to refute his title of martial ancestor. He was the only martial ancestor among the monstrous immortals. The boundless lion tyrant, it's indeed the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor. Chu Fengmian flipped open the ancient book. As Chu Fengmian had guessed, it was the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor. Even though the tyrannical lion progenitor was a beast god, he did not belong to any tribe. He was alone. Even though he had inherited a part of his martial path, it was not complete. As a result, it gradually declined. Chu Fengmian did not expect to find the complete martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor in the cave. If a martial highness obtained this ancient book, they would definitely soar into the sky. Even if they were a nobody, it would be enough to become a peerless expert. The tyrannical lion progenitor had once been a heavenly being. This ancient book recorded the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor throughout his life. If a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu obtained it, it would be enough to double his strength as an Emperor Gu. Among the countless martial skills recorded by the 4 great forces in the Daluo star field, there was not a single book that could be compared to the Boundless Lion Tyrant before him. The Boundless Lion Tyrant, these 4 words represented how invincible the tyrannical lion progenitor was in that era. However, Chu Fengmian sighed. This ancient book was of no use to him. What Chu Fengmian wanted to cultivate was not the martial path of any one person. Chu Fengmian did not even want to cultivate the sword Dao of the master of the sword Dao. What he wanted to do was to create his own sword Dao. A sword Dao that surpassed everything in the world. The Boundless Lion Tyrant did not mean much to Chu Fengmian, as he would never abandon the sword Dao to learn the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor. However, all the martial arts in the world originated from the same source. The Boundless Lion Tyrant recorded the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor, as well as his invincible aura. As long as Chu Fengmian carefully studied it, he would be able to comprehend some of the intents and integrate them into his own sword Dao. He might even be able to create a new sword Dao, just like how Chu Fengmian had created the 9 mysterious sword Dao with the 9 mysterious immortal art. However, comprehending it was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Chu Fengmian placed a few restrictions on the Boundless Lion Tyrant to seal off its power. His figure flickered as he flew deeper into the bridge. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed after learning the origin of the cave abode. The tyrannical lion progenitor had once dominated the 9 realms. Besides, compared to a faction, the tyrannical lion progenitor might have left more treasures behind. After all, even though the Cloud Feather Heaven Palace and the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce had left quite a number of treasures behind, they were not as glorious as the tyrannical lion progenitor. The reason being that a faction would nurture countless disciples and distribute the sacred herbs and sacred pills they collected instead of hiding them. Even though there were many treasures, they would also consume a lot of them, thus not many of them would be left behind. However, the cave abode of the 9 mysterious immortal highness and the cave abode of the tyrannical lion progenitor were different. They were all on their own without any factions. The treasures they collected would be left behind in the cave abodes after their death. The treasures inside the cave abode of the tyrannical lion progenitor were most likely more valuable than the treasures inside the ruins of a faction. The creation tree branch, the purple star rock, and the ancient book of the Boundless Lion Tyrant were only the tip of the iceberg. The real treasures were still inside the cave. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered continuously. However, after reaching 5,000 li, Chu Fengmian's speed slowed down significantly. The pressure that Chu Fengmian was under was so great that even the peak 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu could not move. He could not even take a step forward. Even the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu could not move under the pressure. He could only walk with his feet. Chapter 1568. Even Chu Fengmian's escape light was extremely slow. It was almost the speed of an expert in the divine power realm or even the wind controlling realm. It consumed a lot of spiritual energy for every mile he advanced. It took Chu Fengmian another 4 to 5 hours to cover the distance of 6,000 miles. The pressure on the bridge increased sharply for every 1,000 miles he passed. After reaching 6,000 miles, the pressure on Chu Fengmian's body made it impossible for him to activate his escape light. Chu Fengmian felt that he had reached the depths of the cave. He should not be far from the end of the bridge. Chu Fengmian heard the lions roar coming from the depths of the cave. "Let's go!" Unable to fly, Chu Fengmian landed and activated his movement technique, running toward the depths of the bridge. Even under such great pressure, Chu Fengmian's speed was still not fast enough. Chu Fengmian activated the phantom movement technique to the extreme, creating a shadow with every step. It was hard to tell which one was the real Chu Fengmian. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he had already cultivated the phantom movement technique to the extreme. He moved several miles with every step. The surrounding light curtain had become extremely rare. There was only one light curtain that appeared about 100 miles away. However, Chu Fengmian used his spiritual consciousness to see through the light curtain. He could see the treasures placed within. Black dragon wood, galactic sand, and countless heaven-grade spiritual weapons were placed within. Not only the 9 tribulations' ancient emperors, but even the half-step celestial being experts would go crazy if they saw the treasures and wanted to obtain them. How many treasures did the tyrannical lion martial ancestor obtain? Chu Fengmian saw the countless treasures in the light curtain along the way. It was definitely more than the treasures in the 9 mystic immortal venerables' cave. However, Chu Fengmian completely ignored the treasures in the light curtain. His goal was the end of the bridge. Chu Fengmian did not care about these 100 miles, 200 miles. For Emperor Gu, it was a distance that could be crossed in the blink of an eye. However, it was extremely difficult for him to cross the bridge. With every step forward, not only did he have to bear a huge amount of pressure, but he also had to consume a huge amount of spiritual energy. Even if a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu came, he would not be able to take more than a few steps. He would have to sit down and rest to recover his spiritual energy. On the other hand, Chu Fengmian relied on his holy veins to continuously absorb spiritual energy and restore his spiritual energy. However, gradually, Chu Fengmian felt that his spiritual energy was running out. On this bridge, Chu Fengmian's consumption of spiritual energy was even greater than the spiritual energy absorbed by the divine vein. Chu Fengmian could only take out a large number of saint-grade spirit stones from his empty ring and devour them to recover his spiritual power. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had been using his divine vein to condense saint-grade spirit stones when he had nothing to do. Now, the number of saint-grade spirit stones in Chu Fengmian's spatial ring was in the billions. However, the number of saint-grade spiritual stones that Chu Fengmian was devouring at every moment was extremely shocking. He could devour tens of millions of saint-grade spiritual stones in a single breath. This was enough to support the consumption of Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy, allowing him to rush in with all his might. 6,900 li. While Chu Fengmian was rushing, he also remembered his current location. Suddenly, when Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked ahead, a palace suddenly came into Chu Fengmian's sight. This palace was completely different from the palaces that he had seen before. It was hundreds of times taller and had a majestic aura. At the top of the palace there was a sculpture of a lion. Although it was a sculpture of a lion, the martial Tao that it contained was more terrifying than many martial ancestor sculptures. It was the sculpture of martial ancestor tyrannical lion. Only the sculpture of martial ancestor tyrannical lion could contain such terrifying martial Tao. The sculptures left behind by experts at the level of martial ancestor would contain martial intent. Once the martial Tao reached the peak, it would merge with the martial artist. For example, with Chu Fengmian's current sword Tao, if Chu Fengmian carved a stone sculpture with his own hands, it would also contain extremely terrifying sword intent. It would also be a precious treasure if it was passed down from ancient times. Of course, the primogenitor sky dragon statue was even more exaggerated. Not only was it enough to comprehend the primogenitor sky dragon's martial path, but it was also enough to comprehend the primogenitor sky dragon's strongest primogenitor's 9 moves. Upon having this thought, Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered with passion. Now that his strength had improved, it was more than enough for him to comprehend the 3rd or even the 4th form of the martial ancestor 9 forms. However, Chu Fengmian could not return to the sacred dragon mystical ground right now. If he could find a chance to retrieve the sculpture of martial ancestor Tianlong, it would be great. As Chu Fengmian's strength improved, he might be able to comprehend all 9 forms of the martial ancestor 9 forms one day. Once he had the chance, Chu Fengmian would return to the sacred dragon mystical ground to comprehend the sculpture of martial ancestor Tianlong. Chu Fengmian arrived at the palace while having such thoughts. Even from 100 li away, Chu Fengmian could sense the aura of the martial ancestor tyrannical lion's sculpture. Now that he was witnessing it with his own eyes, the aura of the martial ancestor tyrannical lion's sculpture felt like it was alive. It was as if the lion was only in a deep slumber. Once it was disturbed, it would awaken and tear everything before it apart. 7,000 miles. The end of this bridge is actually a full 7,000 miles. Only then can we reach the end of this bridge. As Chu Fengmian took the final step and arrived before the palace, the pressure on his body dissipated. Chu Fengmian knew that this was the end of the bridge, thus he had completed the trial of the martial ancestor tyrannical lion. Chu Fengmian's clothes were soaked in sweat, causing him to feel extremely worn out. However, with the power of his god vein, once the pressure was gone, he would recover. Within a few breaths' time, Chu Fengmian's qi had fully recovered. Following this, Chu Fengmian opened his eyes and glanced at the palace. The entrance of the palace was completely open. There were no forbidding auras or formations on it. Anyone could easily enter it. However, Chu Fengmian understood how difficult it was to enter the palace. A few forbidding auras and formations were incomparable to it. Even the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu was unable to enter the 7,000 li bridge. Only half-heaven realm cultivators would be able to enter it. The trial of the martial ancestor tyrannical lion was indeed terrifying. Only those with a strength close to the half-heaven realm would be able to complete the trial. Chu Fengmian felt his world spinning as he stepped into the palace. There was something different about the palace. Chapter 1569. As soon as he stepped into the palace, the world before him began to spin, before a mountain range appeared before him. Chu Fengmian immediately sensed a shocking presence of qi. The qi in the mountain range was a lot denser than the qi in the sword principal sect's small world. With a glance, Chu Fengmian saw an enormous qi spring at the bottom of the mountain range. The qi spring was 10 times larger than the qi spring in the sword principal sect. An endless amount of qi was being emitted from the qi spring. That was why the qi was so shocking. The mountain range was a lot better than the sacred ground in the sacred dragon mystical ground. A large number of herbs were growing in the mountain range. Perhaps it was due to the presence of qi, but the trees in the mountain range were extremely tall, reaching a height of over 1,000 zhang. However, apart from the vegetation, there was no sign of life. There were no signs of beasts or humans. Chu Fengmian was currently in a valley. There was a cave in the valley. This should be the real cave of the lion tyrant martial progenitor. Chu Fengmian glanced at the cave with a hint of a smile. Even though the lion tyrant martial progenitor had become a martial progenitor, he was still a lion in his bones. Even though there were countless palaces outside, his real cave abode was located in a mountain cave like this. Chu Fengmian took a glance at the cave, before stepping into it. The cave was pitch black from the outside, but as soon as Chu Fengmian stepped into it, the forbidding formations in the cave were suddenly activated, lighting up the entire cave. In this cave there was only a simple stone bed. On this stone bed there should have been a piece of beast skin. However, perhaps due to the passage of time, the beast's skin had already rotted away, leaving only a few traces behind. Apart from that, there was almost nothing extraordinary in the cave. It was just a simple cave. It was so simple that it was unbelievable. It was hard to believe that this used to be the cave of a martial progenitor. However, Chu Fengmian glanced at the cave. He did not believe that Chu Fengmian would return empty-handed after passing the trial on the lion tyrant martial ancestors bridge. Once one stepped into the light screens on both sides of the bridge, one would be able to obtain a large amount of treasures. Therefore, it was impossible for one to obtain nothing in this cave. Chu Fengmian's gaze swept around and landed on the bottom of the stone bed. Suddenly, he gathered spirit energy in his palm and struck the stone bed. This stone bed was originally made of ordinary bluestone. Chu Fengmian's palm strike didn't even budge the bluestone. One had to know that with Chu Fengmian's current strength, even a casual palm strike could easily shatter a mountain range. Even if there were tens of millions of such blue stones added together, Chu Fengmian could easily crush them with a single palm strike. There is indeed something strange about this. The corners of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled into a slight smile. When his palm landed on the blue stone, its power suddenly dissipated, and it didn't hit the blue stone. This blue stone was indeed an ordinary blue stone that could be seen everywhere. However, there was something else behind this blue stone. Sword out! Chu Fengmian shouted coldly, and the ancestral dragon's supreme sword appeared in his palm. In an instant, Chu Fengmian held the spiritual sword and slashed at the blue stone. With the spiritual sword in hand, the power of this slash was countless times more terrifying than Chu Fengmian's casual strike. Crack! The moment the sword tip flashed, a layer of restriction slowly emerged on the bluestone. Under Chu Fengmian's sword, the restriction hidden on the bluestone was also slashed out by Chu Fengmian's sword. Restriction, a restriction that has decayed for countless years, still wants to resist my sword? Chu Fengmian's face was incomparably cold when he saw the restriction emerge. However, the sword tip in Chu Fengmian's palm became even sharper. Break! Hiss! The sword tip flashed and slashed the restriction with extreme sharpness. With a single sword strike, the already decaying restriction suddenly collapsed. Boom! The blue stone that was protected by the restriction also cracked as the restriction was broken. Under Chu Fengmian's sword light, it was immediately shaken into a pile of powder. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw a secret chamber hidden under the bluestone. In this secret chamber there was a coffin. This coffin was made of white jade. Chu Fengmian glanced at the coffin, then tapped it with his palm and opened it with a rumble. Then Chu Fengmian looked over. There was no skeleton in this coffin. Instead, there was a jade bottle. This jade bottle contained a bottle of essence blood. The real treasure of the lion tyrant martial ancestor was such a bottle. Chu Fengmian glanced at the bottle of essence blood. He moved his palm and grabbed it. The bottle of essence blood fell into Chu Fengmian's palm without any resistance. Chu Fengmian held the bottle of essence blood in his palm. Through the jade bottle, Chu Fengmian seemed to be able to feel the terrifying power contained in the essence blood. The ultimate martial path, the invincible power contained in the essence blood. The essence blood of the lion tyrant martial ancestor. The lion tyrant martial ancestor actually left behind such a bottle of essence blood? Chu Fengmian glanced at it and realized the origin of this bottle of essence blood. It was the essence blood of the lion tyrant martial ancestor. A bottle of essence blood of a martial ancestor who had once reached the heaven realm. The instant Chu Fengmian picked up the bottle of essence blood, a series of words appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. My lifespan is nearing its end. Thus, I left behind this cave dwelling and this essence blood. If any descendant of my clan obtains it, I hope you can use it to revitalize my clan. If an outsider obtains it, I hope you can take care of my clan when you encounter them in the future. Feel free to use this bottle of essence blood as you wish. The lion tyrant martial ancestor also could not escape the end of his lifespan. Chu Fengmian sighed after hearing this. The lion tyrant martial ancestor was an absolutely unparalleled overlord in the history of the 9 domains. To be able to be called a martial ancestor, his strength was unquestionable. Even among the heaven realm experts, the lion tyrant martial ancestor was an expert. Even so, he still could not escape the end of his lifespan. The lion tyrant martial ancestor had purposely left this cave dwelling behind so that his descendants could obtain it. However, There were no experts among the Lion clan of the 9 domains in the end. As such, after several 100,000 years, the cave dwelling was once again opened and divided among the others. I'll be taking this essence blood. In the future, if the Lion clan is in danger, I'll lend them a hand, Chu Fengmian said softly. Since Chu Fengmian had obtained the treasures in the cave dwelling, it could be said that he had obtained half of the Lion Tyrant martial ancestors' inheritance. Chu Fengmian would naturally repay this favor in the future. Chapter 1570. After Chu Fengmian picked up the bottle of blood essence, he closed the lid of the white jade coffin and left the secret chamber in a single step. The final treasure of the Lion Tyrant progenitor was this bottle of blood essence, a bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. In terms of quantity, the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence was not as valuable as the treasures in the light barrier outside. However, in terms of value, it was likely that the value of all the treasures in the light barrier outside was not as valuable as the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. There were only a few drops of heavenly human's blood essence left behind. Each drop was extremely precious. Each drop was extremely precious. If a half-heaven realm expert were to obtain a drop of heavenly human's blood essence, the amount of benefits they would receive would be greatly reduced. However, the heavenly human's blood essence still contained the power of the heavenly humans, thus it would be extremely helpful for them when attempting to break through to the heavenly human's realm in the future. A drop of heavenly human's blood essence was extremely precious. The martial progenitor's blood essence was even more precious than ordinary heavenly human's blood essence. However, Chu Fengmian had obtained more than a single drop of martial progenitor's blood essence. The bottle contained a few hundred drops of martial progenitor's blood essence. The loss of a few hundred drops of martial progenitor's blood essence was extremely serious for him. It was even possible that he would lose his strength and drop his cultivation. If it weren't for the fact that his lifespan was nearing its end, he would not have left the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. It was still too early for Chu Fengmian to comprehend the heavenly human's realm. However, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could improve his strength by more than 30% after devouring the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. Chu Fengmian glanced at the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. With a tap, the forbidding aura on the bottle broke open. Even after a few 100,000 years, the martial progenitor's blood essence still contained a terrifying power. As the forbidding aura was broken, the jade screen alone was unable to contain the martial progenitor's blood essence. Crack! Countless cracks appeared on the jade bottle. Following this, the martial progenitor's blood essence flew out from the bottle and turned into a lion in the air. This lion didn't care about Chu Fengmian and flew straight outside. Bloodlines had spirit. For experts like the Lion Tyrant martial progenitor, even if they were dead, their blood essence would still possess the power to gather life. Seeing that the martial progenitor's blood essence was trying to escape, Chu Fengmian sneered and suddenly reached out his hand and grabbed the lion. A surge of spiritual energy enveloped the lion formed from the martial ancestor's blood essence. The lion roared madly, but it was unable to break free from Chu Fengmian's grasp. The martial progenitor's blood essence. The martial progenitor's blood essence of the martial progenitor. This was especially true for the lump of martial ancestor blood essence, which had been sealed in a jade bottle for over 100,000 years. It of the Chu. Chu Fengmian activated the heaven-devouring secret skill. His body turned into a huge whirlpool and devoured the martial progenitor's blood essence. Once the martial progenitor's blood essence merged with Chu Fengmian's body, the power in his body began to rise, especially the battle dragon bloodline. The battle dragon bloodline went crazy. It devoured the power and spiritual energy contained in the martial progenitor's blood essence. Suddenly, a drop of martial progenitor's blood essence flew out from the 129,600 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body. the drop of martial progenitor's blood essence was devoured the fastest. Suddenly, countless runes appeared on the golden drop of battle dragon blood essence. The runes began to condense on the drop of battle dragon blood essence. As it was perfected, it turned into a formation. Boom! When the formation was completed, the power of the drop of battle dragon blood essence skyrocketed rapidly, which was over 100 times stronger than before. The Dragon Emperor's blood essence. Chu Fengmian saw the transformation of the drop of battle dragon blood essence. He knew that it was the beginning of the second level of the battle dragon skill. The formation in the blood was the appearance of the Dragon Emperor blood essence. An ancient Dragon Emperor was 100 times stronger than an ordinary ancient battle dragon. The power contained in the drop of Dragon Emperor blood essence was also 100 times stronger than the battle dragon blood essence. Although the transformation of a drop was not worth mentioning to Chu Fengmian's strength, if all of the battle dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body were transformed into the Dragon Emperor blood essence, Chu Fengmian's strength would increase by 100 times. The drop of Dragon Emperor blood essence was only the first drop to be transformed. The power contained in a bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence was far more than that. The second drop, the third drop. After absorbing enough energy, the battle dragon essence blood began to transform and condense into the Dragon Emperor essence blood. 1,000 drops. When the last drop of martial progenitor's blood essence was devoured, the transformation of the battle dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body gradually came to an end. After devouring the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence, 1,000 drops of battle dragon blood essence became the Dragon Emperor blood essence. 1,000 drops of Dragon Emperor blood essence contained the same power as 100,000 drops of battle dragon blood essence. Although only 1,000 drops of the 129,600 drops of battle dragon blood essence had been transformed into the Dragon Emperor blood essence. However, Chu Fengmian's aura and strength had increased by about 70%. The benefits it brought were greater than what Chu Fengmian had expected. Chu Fengmian's cultivation realm had also increased along with his strength, stepping into the peak of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. He was only a step away from the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. The speed of his improvement was simply unimaginable. A few days ago, Chu Fengmian had just passed the Emperor Tribulation and stepped into the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu from the Quasi-Emperor realm. Now, after devouring the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian's cultivation realm had directly reached the peak of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. No wonder the emergence of the 9 domains has made so many people crazy. A large treasure trove is enough to bring such great benefits. Chu Fengmian sighed. If not for the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian might not be able to transform the battle dragon blood essence again, even if he spent several years. However, with the help of the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian had easily transformed the 1,000 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence into the Dragon Emperor blood essence. This was an opportunity, the opportunity of a large treasure trove. Obtaining such an opportunity was enough for a small figure to reach the sky in a single bound. The 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster, Ancestor by Luo. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a hint of murderous intent. Chu Fengmian still remembered the Builder Tree branch. It was time to take it back from Ancestor by Luo. Chapter 1571. After Chu Fengmian had completely refined the martial ancestor's blood essence, 1,000 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence had been transformed into Dragon Emperor blood essence. Now, Chu Fengmian's strength had nearly doubled. Moreover, with the enhancement of his bloodline power, Chu Fengmian's 9 moves of the primogenitor would be even more powerful. If Chu Fengmian could only contend with the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu before, he was now confident that he could kill the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu with a single strike. With such strength, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could defeat the 5 Elements Saber Master and Ancestor by Luo. Even if the 2 of them joined forces, Chu Fengmian would be able to kill them both. There are so many Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations on the bridge now? Chu Fengmian left the palace and stepped onto the bridge again. In an instant, he could feel the boundless power of the heavens and earth churning on the bridge. Almost every power of the heavens and earth represented a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. In such a short period of time, 9 Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations had gathered on the bridge, excluding Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian used his spiritual consciousness to detect that among the 9 Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations, 5 of them belonged to the other 3 major forces. It seemed that the experts of the 3 major forces made up the majority of the 9 regions. After all, the 9 regions were still within the Daluotian star field. Therefore, the 3 major forces of the Daluotian star field were the first to know about the opening of the 9 regions. Although the news had already spread, the experts of the other star fields would have to spend a certain amount of time to rush over. However, as time passed, the experts of the other star fields would continue to rush over. Ancestor Bai Luo hasn't left yet. Chu Fengmian scanned with his spiritual consciousness and saw a familiar figure. It was Ancestor Bai Luo. Now, he had entered a light screen and was searching for the treasures within. An illusory image of a divine tree appeared on his body, containing extreme vitality. Chu Fengmian knew that Forefather Biluo was refining the builder tree branch the moment he saw it. However, it was extremely difficult for Forefather Bai Luo to refine the builder tree branch even though he had fused it into his body. However, he was still unable to completely refine it. All he could do was slowly erase the power of the creation tree branch. The divine tree projection on Forefather Bai Luo's body was formed because he couldn't completely refine the builder tree branch, causing the power within it to leak out. Chu Fengmian sneered when he saw this. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he could fight 1 against 2 or even 3 against the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, but that would only be a defeat. The difficulty of killing a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu was dozens of times greater than defeating him. Forefather Biluo was alone, which was the best time for Chu Fengmian to strike. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered and flew in the direction of the light curtain. He began to pass through the bridge. After refining the martial ancestor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian's body was tainted with martial ancestor tyrannical lion's aura. The pressure on the bridge that enveloped Chu Fengmian was less than 1/10 of what it had been before. In the blink of an eye, Chu Fengmian stepped into the light curtain. Who's there? Forefather Bai Luo was searching for the treasures within the light curtain. He fully unfolded his spiritual consciousness and observed every movement in the surroundings. Killing and robbing were common on the bridge. Forefather Bai Luo was extremely cautious. Suddenly, he felt an aura step into the light curtain. Without any explanation, he condensed several green bamboos from his palm and stabbed at the entrance of the light curtain. The speed of these bamboos was a bit faster than when he fought with Chu Fengmian. Moreover, there were golden spots on the green bamboos. Forefather Bai Luo's aura was stronger than when he fought with Chu Fengmian. The builder tree branch was worthy of being a wood attribute treasure. Although Forefather Bai Luo had only refined a small part of it, it was enough to elevate his strength and increase his strength. The bamboos were like spears, piercing straight at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's figure flashed as he executed Phantom Body. He sensed danger as soon as he stepped into the light curtain. The bamboos pierced through an illusory figure. The real Chu Fengmian was already standing in the secret chamber, not far from Forefather Bai Luo. Chu Fengmian, it's you? Forefather Bai Luo turned his head and looked in Chu Fengmian's direction. When he saw Chu Fengmian's appearance, his face twisted into a sinister expression. Beneath his ferocious face were a pair of greedy eyes. When he'd fought with Chu Fengmian earlier, he'd learned of his countless fortuitous encounters. Even the famous 9 profound immortal arts were in his hands. After completely refining the builder tree branch, Forefather Bai Luo's strength would rise to an unimaginable level. At the very least, he'd be able to reach the peak of 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. If he could obtain Chu Fengmian's 9 mystic immortal art, with the strength of a peak 9 tribulations ancient emperor, the power of the 9 mystic immortal art would be enough to contend against a half-step celestial being. By then, his strength would increase by more than 10-fold or even 100-fold. This is an opportunity bestowed upon me by the heavens. Brat, you barged into the gates of hell. Don't even think about escaping this time. Forefather Bai Luo's eyes flashed with killing intent. He'd just devoured a part of the Builder Tree branch, and his strength had soared when he ran into Chu Fengmian. Now was the best time to kill him. Forefather Bai Luo let out a long howl, and countless bamboos sprouted from the ground. Each of these bamboos contained an ancient pattern. Countless green bamboos surrounded the secret chamber and formed into a sealing technique that sealed the surrounding space. No matter how powerful the escaping light was, it wouldn't be able to escape from this seal. Last time, he'd underestimated his enemy and allowed Chu Fengmian to use the Tianlong change to escape through the space. This time, he'd sealed the space immediately. At the same time, Forefather Bai Luo also made his move. Hundreds of bamboos formed into an incomparably huge spear and blasted towards Chu Fengmian. Escape? Who said I'm here to escape? Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with mockery. So what if Forefather Bai Luo's strength had increased? Chu Fengmian's harvest in martial progenitor tyrannical lion's cave abode was much more than Forefather Bai Luo's. Boom! Chu Fengmian's strength erupted without any concealment and an aura soared into the sky. Chapter 1572. The peak power of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu soared into the sky, forming the shadow of an ancient battle dragon that shrouded Chu Fengmian. Although Chu Fengmian was at the peak of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu, his strength was stronger than that of 9th Tribulation Emperor Gu. In particular, the battle dragon's shadow on Chu Fengmian's body no longer looked like an ordinary ancient battle dragon, but like a dragon emperor incomparably noble. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's strength was vividly displayed. Peak of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu? When Ancestor Bai Luo saw Chu Fengmian's realm clearly, the astonishment in his eyes didn't dissipate for a long time. The last time he saw Chu Fengmian's realm had just stepped into 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu. Many geniuses would have to spend decades to reach the peak of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm and meet some Emperor Gu with average aptitude. Hundreds of years might not be enough for 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu to reach the peak of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu, but Chu Fengmian's strength had increased so quickly in just a day. This kind of increase in strength was simply appalling. Ancestor Bai Luo thought that it would be easy to kill Chu Fengmian after he got the Builder Tree branch and devoured part of its power. But now, Chu Fengmian's strength was beyond his imagination. While Ancestor Bai Luo was still in shock, Chu Fengmian had already made his move. Facing the attack of the bamboo spear, Chu Fengmian only raised his palm gently. Behind Chu Fengmian, the power of the war dragon's shadow gathered in Chu Fengmian's palm. Then, he struck out with his palm. A group of dragons roared as if a real dragon was performing a martial technique of the Dragon Clan. The second move of primogeniture. The power of bloodline boiled. This time, the power of the second move of primogeniture was countless times stronger than before. A palm shot out and collided with the bamboo spear in the air. The bamboo spear exploded on the spot, shattered by a single palm strike. The tyrannical power forced Ancestor Bai Luo to retreat. Now that Chu Fengmian's strength had improved further, an ordinary 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu would find it hard to contend with Chu Fengmian's strength. Damn it! How did this person's strength increase to such a level? Could it be that the treasure at the end of this bridge has been obtained by this person? Forefather Bai Luo sobered up after being sent flying. Chu Fengmian's strength was no longer something he could contend with. Even among the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, this kind of strength was absolutely strong. In just one day, Chu Fengmian's strength had doubled. There was no other possibility other than the fact that Chu Fengmian had obtained the treasure at the end of the bridge. He has obtained another large treasure trove. If he continues to develop, he will really become the second Yun Zun. Ancestor Bai Luo's eyes flashed with a hint of decisiveness. He suddenly let out a wild roar that resounded through the entire bridge. This roar seemed to be a unique calling sound. Chu Fengmian had already discovered with his spiritual sense that several Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu were rapidly approaching after Ancestor Bai Luo's roar. Ancestor Bai Luo was calling for the arrival of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu from the other three forces. He now knew that he was no match for Chu Fengmian alone, so he gave up the idea of taking the treasure from Chu Fengmian alone. He wanted to summon the other Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu to deal with Chu Fengmian. You still want to call for help? I'll kill you first. Murderous intent surged in Chu Fengmian's eyes. He didn't know if he could delay any longer. Chu Fengmian still had a chance to kill Ancestor Bai Luo in a one-on-one fight. However, if Ancestor Bai Luo summoned the other Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, it would be a one-on-one fight. When that happened, Chu Fengmian would have to fight one against two or three. It would be virtually impossible for him to kill Forefather Biluo and obtain the Builder Tree branch. In a flash, sword light flew out from the World's Edge sword case on Chu Fengmian's back, shooting out hundreds of sword lights. The power of each sword light reached the peak of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu's attack. As Chu Fengmian's strength increased, the sword energy from the World's Edge sword case grew stronger. After all, the World's Edge sword case was once a Celestial Realm expert's spiritual weapon. As Chu Fengmian's strength increased, its true power was displayed. Hundreds of sword lights gathered together and slashed at Ancestor Bai Luo from the sky. Immortal rotten wood. Forefather Bai Luo sensed the danger when he saw the incoming sword light. With a long whistle, a small piece of withered wood appeared in his palm. Although this piece of withered wood was withered, the vitality it contained was comparable to the creation tree branch. Ancestor Bai Luo's figure flashed and merged with the small piece of dead wood, turning into a decaying tree. He became one with the tree. The rotten wood wrapped around Forefather Jaderhead's body, protecting it with a powerful life force. What is this decaying tree? How can it have such amazing vitality? Chu Fengmian's expression changed when he saw the decaying tree. Even at first glance, Chu Fengmian could tell that the decaying tree was extraordinary. Its terrifying vitality was not inferior to the Builder Tree branch. Now that Ancestor Bai Luo had merged with the decaying tree, his aura skyrocketed. Although Patriarch Bai Luo couldn't attack in this state, it was almost impossible for him to kill Patriarch Bai Luo with his astonishing vitality. Hundreds of sword lights from the World's Edge sword case gathered into a huge sword light and slashed down from the sky onto the decaying tree. Where the sword light landed, a crack immediately tore open. But just as the decaying tree was about to be cut in half, a burst of vitality erupted. A shocking amount of life force immediately burst out from within, and the cracks that had appeared were perfectly repaired. The power of the sword couldn't leave a single mark on Ancestor Bai Luo's body. How troublesome! Chu Fengmian's eyes showed some anxiety. He had sensed that the other Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations were about to arrive. Ancestor Bai Luo's move was to stall for time and wait for the other Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations to arrive before besieging Chu Fengmian. Ancestor Bai Luo sneered when he saw the anxiety in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Boy, do you really think you can kill a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu just because you have a few fortuitous encounters? In a while, it will be the time of your death. He only needed to stall for time and wait for the other Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations to arrive. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian was, he wouldn't be able to take on three people. Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to fight one against three. If he fought one against four, Chu Fengmian would die under the siege. I'll take the Builder Tree branch first. Chu Fengmian was also thinking about this. Suddenly, he made a decision and rushed toward Ancestor Bai Luo in a flash. Chapter 1573. Chu Fengmian made up his mind. He didn't have to kill Forefather Biluo today, but he had to get his hands on the Builder Tree branch. Now that Forefather Biluo had only refined a very small part of the branch, Chu Fengmian could still use some means to take it out of Forefather Biluo's body. The branch would be of great benefit to Chu Fengmian's divine tree. Chu Fengmian was determined to get his hands on the branch, no matter what. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered and arrived in front of Forefather Biluo in the blink of an eye. The ancestral dragon supreme sword and titanic pagoda godly sword struck out at the same time. Dazzling sword radiance contained supreme sword intent as it slashed at Forefather Biluo. It's useless. You think you can break through my true body of rotten wood? Forefather Biluo smirked disdainfully at Chu Fengmian's incoming sword radiance. He allowed the sword radiance to strike his body. Hiss! When the sword light slashed down, Forefather Biluo's rotten wood form was sliced to pieces. What happened next was exactly the same as what had happened before. A surge of vitality condensed and the cracks on the rotten wood began to heal. Forefather Jade Konk's rotten wood form seemed to have an undying body. No matter how powerful an attack was, it was able to dissolve it and recover. This rotten wood is definitely not inferior to the branch of the Builder Tree. It might even be a supreme treasure that surpasses it. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he stared at the rotten wood. This power definitely didn't belong to Forefather Biluo, but to the rotten wood. Now, Forefather Jade Konk had become one with the piece of rotten wood. The power of Chu Fengmian's sword slash all hit the rotten wood and was neutralized by this piece of rotten wood. Don't waste your energy, kid. You won't be able to escape if you don't escape soon. Forefather Biluo taunted Chu Fengmian. You're just a turtle shell. I'd like to see how long you can last. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with fury, as if he was truly enraged by Forefather Biluo's words. He condensed sword radiance and the blade flashed, bombarding the rotten wood with several more sword radiances. Streaks of sword light slashed at the rotten wood, shattering it again and again until it was riddled with holes. However, even though it was riddled with holes, the rotten wood still exuded an astonishing vitality. During the interval between the swords, the rotten wood was able to recover. Chu Feng even tried to burn the rotten wood with his pure yang heavenly fire, but to his surprise, he was unable to burn it. Fire restrains wood. This was a matter of course, but the pure yang heavenly fire was actually helpless against this piece of rotten wood. What's going on? Forefather Biluo, who forced you to do this? Rumble. All of a sudden, the light screen flickered, and a figure stepped into it, passing through it and arriving in the secret chamber. This was a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Judging from the strength of his body, he should be a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu from the Blue Sea capital. The arrival of Emperor Gu startled him when he saw Forefather Biluo turn into a piece of rotten wood. He and Biluo were old acquaintances, so he naturally understood that this move was the Forefather's ultimate life-saving move. He wouldn't use it unless he was in a life-or-death situation. But now, Forefather Biluo had been forced to use all his trump cards. Biluo was overjoyed when he saw the newcomer. You've come at the right time, King Sunflower Ocean. This kid is Chu Fengmian. Join me and kill him. Chu Fengmian? King Sunflower Ocean, Emperor Gu, stared at Chu Fengmian with a frosty gaze. News of Chu Fengmian's escape from Forefather Biluo and 5 Elements Saber Master in a 1 versus 2 fight had spread. The growth of Chu Fengmian's strength was too terrifying. Now, the 9 Tribulation Ancient Emperors of the 3 major forces had given the order to kill Chu Fengmian. He had to kill Chu Fengmian before he reached his full potential. King Sunflower Ocean didn't hesitate to attack when he heard Biluo's words. A trident flew out of his hand. The trident was said to be the weapon of the sea god. Many Emperor Gu of the Blue Ocean capital used tridents as their weapons. Spiritual energy gathered on the trident's edge as soon as it appeared, and it blasted at Chu Fengmian. Sword break! Chu Fengmian glanced at the trident and sent out a beam of sword light with a flash of sword edge in his hand. When the halberd and sword collided, King Sunflower Sea felt a huge force hit him. He almost lost his grip on the trident and was forced to retreat. His eyes were filled with disbelief. How can he possess such strength? Isn't he just an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu? King Sunflower Ocean didn't understand how Chu Fengmian could possess such strength. Although Chu Fengmian was only an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu, he was stronger than many 9th Tribulation Emperor Gu in terms of strength. The strength of an ordinary 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu wasn't even a tenth of a 9th Tribulation Emperor Gu's strength. In King Sunflower Ocean's opinion, Chu Fengmian could only contend with him at best, even if he had some fortuitous encounters. King Sunflower Ocean knew he was wrong after this exchange. Chu Fengmian's strength was already above many 9th Tribulation Emperor Gu's. If he didn't use his full strength, he might even be defeated by Chu Fengmian, let alone kill him. See, God descends. Halberd disrupts heaven and earth. King Sunflower Sea let out a roar and executed his strongest move. An illusionary figure of the god of the sea appeared behind him. As soon as the phantom appeared, King Sunflower Ocean's strength soared several times. Every time he swung the trident in his hand, it seemed to be able to stir up the universe. Holding the trident, King Sunflower Ocean approached in a flash, thrusting the trident at Chu Fengmian's chest. The sharpness of the trident was unstoppable. Crafty bamboo spear. Forefather Bai Luo also dispelled the state of being one with the tree. With a wave of his hand, he sent bamboo spears as sharp as spears at Chu Fengmian's back. They formed a pincer attack on Chu Fengmian. You want to besiege me? Voracious wolf. Giant door. Lutsuan. Heavenly mystery. The power of the stars gathered on the twin swords. Chu Fengmian slashed out with his sword and turned it into a river of stars. The bamboos and the trident attacks all fell into the river of stars and were washed away by the endless power within it, turning into fragments. The power within became a part of the river of stars. Heaven-devouring secret technique. At the same time, Chu Fengmian suddenly made his move. A heaven-devouring seed had appeared beside Forefather Bai Luo without anyone noticing. With Chu Fengmian's urging, the heaven-devouring seed erupted and turned into a heaven-devouring secret technique. Chapter 1574. Next to Forefather Biluo, the Sky Devourer's secret art suddenly erupted. The raging power devoured Forefather Bilui, causing him to lose his balance and be pulled into the vortex of the heaven-gulfing secret art. Forefather Biluo couldn't react in time to the sudden turn of events. Chu Fengmian had been waiting for Biluo to make a move. If Biluo had remained as a piece of rotten wood, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have been able to do anything to him. However, Biluo had always wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, which Chu Fengmian took advantage of. He purposely revealed an opening and allowed Biluo to launch a sneak attack. If Biluo wanted to attack, he would have to break free from the state of being one with the wood. This was Chu Fengmian's chance. What's going on? As someone who'd experienced countless battles of life and death, Biluo's figure flashed and he barely managed to break free of the Sky Devourer's secret art's devouring. However, the suction of the giant vortex didn't let him go. Under the shroud of this devouring power, Patriarch Bai Luo's body was being pulled towards the sky-devouring secret technique at every moment. Forefather Biluo understood that he'd fallen into Chu Fengmian's trap. Undying rotten wood. Ancestor Bai Luo roared and tried to activate the power of the rotten wood in his palm again. Astonishing life force began to fuse with his body again. Humph, you want to become one with the wood again? Primogenitor's second move. Break. Chu Fengmian glared at Biluo. He'd gone to great lengths to trick Biluo into breaking free from the state of being one with the wood. How could he allow him to burrow into his turtle shell again? Just as Ancestor Bai Luo was about to become one with the tree, a wave of spiritual energy had already accumulated above Chu Fengmian's head. Chu Fengmian let out a long howl. Chu Fengmian roared and slammed down. Rumble! Wherever the dragon claw passed, it swept through everything and slammed into Ancestor by Luo's body. Although Biluo's body was close to becoming one with the wood, Chu Fengmian's claw slammed into him and blew him up in the air. He turned into a ball of essence blood. The piece of ebony in his hand also flew out. Good stuff, give it to me. Chu Fengmian looked at the piece of ebony that flew out and coldly shouted. A dragon claw directly grabbed at the piece of ebony. Halberd suppresses the ocean. Right behind Chu Fengmian, a halberd light slashed towards him. However, Chu Fengmian was prepared. Behind Chu Fengmian, hundreds of sword chi flew out from the world's edge sword case and slashed towards King Sunflower Sea, blocking his halberd light. At the same time, Chu Fengmian grabbed the ebony in his hand. As soon as it fell into Chu Fengmian's hand, the surging vitality of this piece of ebony entered his body. Chu Fengmian could sense that the divine tree within his body had become incomparably excited, thirsting for the power of this piece of ebony. This ebony is indeed related to the tree of God. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed. Based on the reaction of the divine tree alone, he knew that the ebony was definitely a precious treasure. In terms of value, it might not be inferior to the half-man-tall builder tree branch. It should be known that Ancestor by Luo was almost invincible in front of Chu Fengmian with this piece of ebony. This was something that even a heaven-grade spiritual weapon could not achieve. However, Chu Fengmian didn't just want the ebony tree. He also wanted the builder tree branch. Tree of God. Chu Fengmian roared and the shadow of the tree of God immediately flew out from behind him. The moment the shadow of the tree of God flew out, it immediately locked onto Ancestor by Luo's body and emitted a wave of spiritual energy. Due to this wave of spiritual energy, the shadow of the builder tree behind Ancestor by Luo began to totter and the builder tree branch began to be stripped from Ancestor by Luo's body. In a burst of dazzling green light, the builder tree branch was pulled out of Ancestor by Luo's body little by little. What is this? This builder tree branch has been refined by me and has become one with me. How can it be pulled out by someone else? What a pure wood elemental spiritual energy. This is a tree of God. There is actually a living tree of God in this world? And it has been subdued? How is this possible? Ancestor by Luo stared at Chu Fengmian and shouted in disbelief. He could see that there was a tree of God hidden in Chu Fengmian's body. It was the power of the tree of God that was stripping the builder tree branch from his body. No matter how deep his understanding of wood elemental spiritual energy was, it couldn't be compared to a real tree of God. Wood King descends. Suppress all trees. Ancestor by Luo roared and urged all his means to suppress the builder tree branch. He wanted to keep it in his body. Even if the Wood King were alive, he wouldn't be able to go against the tree of God. Take it away. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly and injected a wave of spiritual energy into the tree of God. Immediately, the power of the tree of God skyrocketed countless times. The builder tree branch was immediately stripped from Ancestor by Luo's body. The branch, which was half the height of a person, only had about 80% of its original power left. Obviously, 20% of its power had been devoured by Ancestor by Luo. No matter how many means Chu Fengmian had, it was useless. However, even with 80% of its power left, the power contained in the builder tree branch was extremely shocking. The branch flew into the tree of God's shadow and was immediately devoured by the tree of God, pulling it into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian. The moment Chu Fengmian took the builder tree branch, a figure walked in from the light screen. The moment he saw Chu Fengmian's appearance, the figure instantly attacked. The power of the 5 elements condensed into a long saber in his hand. The power of the saber was aimed at Chu Fengmian. 5 elements saber master. Chu Fengmian knew who came the moment the saber appeared. Facing the saber, Chu Fengmian slashed with the sword in his hand and collided with the 5 elements divine saber in the air. The violent power bombarded the 5 elements divine saber. The five elements divine saber that was slashing towards him was immediately shattered. How is this possible? How did this kid's power increase so much? The five elements saber master stared at Chu Fengmian and said in disbelief. This time, Chu Fengmian's strength had increased by a whole fold. The treasure at the end of the bridge was most likely obtained by this kid. Don't talk nonsense with him. I don't believe that a mere 8 tribulations Emperor Gu can contend with the three of us. Even if this kid has many fortuitous encounters, we can still kill him. Chapter 1575. Forefather Bai Luo stared at Chu Fengmian and roared crazily. His eyes were filled with burning greed. He had actually found a divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body. Moreover, it was still a young divine tree. It was a divine tree that could be subdued. This discovery drove Forefather Bai Luo mad. As a wood attribute cultivator, Ancestor Bai Luo naturally knew how powerful the divine tree was. He had only devoured a small portion of the builder tree branch, but it was enough to make his strength undergo a tremendous change. There was an entire divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body. With this divine tree, I'm sure I can enter the half-step celestial realm, or even the celestial realm. A divine tree at its peak is comparable to a celestial realm cultivator. I must have this divine tree. Forefather Bai Luo gave it his all. The blood mist that filled the sky condensed into a figure under his vitality. Given his realm of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, the destruction of his physical body didn't cost him much. Hundreds of green bamboos stabbed at Chu Fengmian under the control of his spiritual power. You want to kill me with just the 3 of you working together? What a joke. Today I'll show you my true strength. Chu Fengmian was in a good mood after obtaining the builder tree branch and the ebony. He wasn't afraid at all when the 3 of them worked together. He wanted to see how strong he had become. Now that he had obtained the builder tree branch, Chu Fengmian had no scruples. He didn't even pay attention to the countless green bamboos bombarding him. He allowed the countless bamboos to pierce Chu Fengmian's body. Crack! The bamboos pierced Chu Fengmian's body one after another. Chu Fengmian's seemingly weak skin was now as hard as steel. Every single bamboo was unable to pierce through Chu Fengmian's skin. On Chu Fengmian's skin were 129,600 fleshly crystals, forming a perfect defense. The sharp edges of the bamboos were all broken. Forefather Bai Luo, 5 elements saber master, King Sunflower Ocean, you 3 will die here today. Don't even think about escaping. Chu Fengmian laughed and struck with both swords. 2 beams of sword light aimed at Forefather Biluo and 5 elements saber patriarch. At the same time, the world's edge sword case behind Chu Fengmian was also flashing with sword light. They flew out from the world's edge sword case and slashed towards King Sunflower Sea. 1 against 3. Facing these 3 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian was fighting 1 against 3, and now he had the upper hand. The power of this builder tree branch is indeed strong. Chu Fengmian dared to take on the 3 of them one-on-one because he could feel a steady stream of power pouring into his body after the creation tree branch was refined by the divine tree. Even though it was difficult for Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations to refine this builder tree branch, it was a matter of seconds for Chu Fengmian. The divine tree was once a branch of the builder tree, so it was of the same origin as the builder tree branch. The moment the builder tree branch fell into the hands of the divine tree, it was instantly devoured and its power poured into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian's strength had doubled after devouring the martial ancestor's blood essence, and now he had devoured the power of the builder tree branch. There was no reason for him to escape. The 9 tribulations Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations were the top echelons of the 3 great forces. Every time Chu Fengmian killed one of them, it would be a heavy blow to the 3 great forces. Of course, Chu Fengmian would not let go of such an opportunity. 9 Mysterious Galaxy. Rumble. The galaxy formed by the 9 mysterious swordsmanship shrouded Chu Fengmian and bombarded the 5 elements Saber Master, Forefather by Luo, and King Sunflower Sea. In an instant, the three of them were pulled into the galaxy. Countless streaks of sword chi in the galaxy slashed at the three of them. Damn it, this kid's strength has increased. How did he refine the Builder Tree branch so quickly? Forefather by Luo sensed Chu Fengmian's power. His eyes filled with incomparable madness. He could feel the power of the divine tree rising in Chu Fengmian's body. It was obvious that the Builder Tree branch had been refined by Chu Fengmian. After a few exchanges, Chu Fengmian's strength did not weaken, but instead grew stronger. As the divine tree refined the Builder Tree branch, its power rose steadily, which also meant that Chu Fengmian's strength was also growing stronger. Now, the three of them could not fight back even if they joined forces. We can't be entangled with this guy. Let's go. Damn it, this guy is indeed a big problem. When we get out, we must gather the other Emperor Gu and kill him together. The Five Elements Saber Master roared and made his decision. Let's go. King Sunflower Sea also roared. The power of the three suddenly condensed together, turning into a divine light that could split the sky and earth, bombarding the Milky Way. It forcibly created a gap in the galaxy formed by the 9 profound sword technique. This divine ray broke through the galaxy and flew directly in the direction of the light curtain. Chu Fengmian did not expect this. The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu still had such terrifying strength even after risking his life. Chu Fengmian could suppress the three of them, but it would be extremely difficult to catch all three of them in one fell swoop. I can't let them escape. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed some killing intent. In order to deal with the three of them, Chu Fengmian had exposed the secret of the divine tree and used all his trump cards. If he did not kill the three of them, he would definitely be in great trouble in the future. Supreme Sword Formation. 1,800 Supreme Sword Chi flew out from Chu Fengmian's body and came to the entrance of the light curtain. They intertwined with each other and turned into a Supreme Sword Formation. Among the sword formations in the world, the strongest one was the Supreme Sword Formation formed by Supreme Sword Chi. This was the ancestor of the Myriad Sword Formation, and also the world's #1 killing formation. Supreme Sword Chi. How could such a sword principal treasure be in his hands? How many amazing fortuitous encounters has this person had? Seeing the Supreme Sword Formation formed by the Supreme Sword Chi and sealed the light curtain, the 5 Elements Saber Master and the other two were almost mad with jealousy. Supreme Sword Principal Treasure, innate Divine Beast Essence Blood, and even the Divine Tree. Every encounter Chu Fengmian had made them mad with jealousy. They could not wait to kill Chu Fengmian and divide the treasures on him. Their strength would improve by leaps and bounds. But now, what they needed to do was to escape. This Supreme Sword Formation is not complete. It's only formed by a part of it. Let's rush out. The 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster took a glance at the Supreme Sword Formation. He could tell that the Supreme Sword Formation was different from the rumors. It was incomplete. Chapter 1576. The Supreme Sword Formation formed from 3,000 Supreme Sword Chis was the world's #1 killing formation. Even if one of them was missing, its power would be weakened countless times. Although Chu Fengmian had obtained 1,800 Supreme Sword Chis, the Supreme Sword Formation was still incomplete. If the complete Supreme Sword Formation was formed, the three of them would not be able to break it even if they tried their best. Burn the laws of heaven and earth. Strike. The spiritual power of the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster suddenly became extremely violent, and a golden light flew out from his body. This golden light contained the rich power of heaven and earth. It contained 500 laws of heaven and earth. An ordinary Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations only had about 2,000 laws of heaven and earth in his body. 500 laws of heaven and earth were struck out by the 5 Elements Saber Master, which was almost a quarter of the power in his body. Golden flames were ignited in front of him and began to burn fiercely. Waves of extremely strong power surged into the five elements Saber Grandmaster's body, causing his power to grow crazily. Fight! Ancestor by Luo and King Sunflower Ocean exchanged a glance. The power in their bodies became violent as they each took out 500 strands of nomological laws of heaven and earth. They burned at the same time. The power of 1,500 laws of heaven and earth burned at this moment. The golden flames shrouded the escaping light and turned into a long rainbow. It crashed into the supreme sword formation in the direction of the light screen. Boom! After burning the laws of heaven and earth, the combined power of the three was almost at the level of a half-step celestial being. Any Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations would die on the spot if he were to withstand such a powerful attack. The long rainbow bombarded the center of the Supreme Sword Formation. Countless cracks appeared on the Supreme Sword Formation formed by 1,800 Supreme Sword Chis at the moment of collision. Hundreds of Supreme Sword Chis were immediately scattered and flew out. The Supreme Sword Formation was in imminent danger. Boom! At this moment, another rich power of heaven and earth descended. At this critical moment, another figure appeared from the light screen. Another Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations had arrived. Who is it? Emperor Yen? It's Emperor Yen. Emperor Yen, come and help us. After we kill this kid, we'll give you a share of his fortune. From now on, our 3 forces will protect your Yanzhou continent. The 5 elements Saber Master and the others said in unison. Although the 3 of them were at a disadvantage in the fight with Chu Fengmian, the result would be different if there was another Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations. After all, Chu Fengmian had already used all his trump cards to deal with the 3 of them. With the addition of a 9 tribulation ancient emperor, they had a 50% chance of killing Chu Fengmian. Even if he didn't kill Chu Fengmian, he could still severely injure him. At the very least, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to recover for several years. In order to kill Chu Fengmian, they were willing to give up some benefits to win over the Yen Emperor. When Chu Fengmian saw this figure, the tension in his heart finally relaxed a little, and the corner of his mouth revealed a somewhat cold smile. Emperor. The 5 elements Saber Master's eyes flickered. Seeing that Emperor Yen had no intention of attacking, he hurriedly shouted. Boom! After hearing this, the Yen Emperor finally condensed spiritual energy in his palm. This also made the 5 elements Saber Master and the others relax a little. But at this moment, this spiritual power suddenly shot out from Emperor Yan's palm. However, this target was not Chu Fengmian, but a palm directly bombarded the 5 elements Saber Master. What? Puff! Before the 5 elements Saber Master could react, he was hit in the chest by the palm. He immediately spat out a large mouthful of blood essence. His face was extremely pale. In order to break the Supreme Sword Formation, he had burned 500 laws of heaven and earth. His body was extremely weak. At this moment, he was suddenly hit by a palm, and the power in his body collapsed on the spot. His realm fell with this large mouthful of blood essence. He fell to the realm of Emperor Gu of the 8 tribulations. Even if the 5 elements Saber Master recovered from this injury, his strength would be reduced by a few %. Emperor Yen, what are you planning to do? Could it be that you plan to become enemies with the 3 major forces? Seeing the 5 elements Saber Master being sent flying, Ancestor by Luo and King Sunflower Sea stared at Chu Fengmian and said fiercely, Emperor Yen, even if you have stepped into the realm of Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations, you are just an ant in front of the 3 major forces. What are you trying to do today? That's right. If you don't give me an explanation, you will be buried with this kid today. Explanation? What kind of explanation? Do I need to give you 3 dead people any explanation? Suddenly, Chu Fengmian spoke. He looked at the 5 elements Saber Master and the other 2 as if he was looking at 3 dead people. Then, Chu Fengmian looked at Emperor Yen and said, Let's attack together. Don't waste time. Kill them first. Okay. Emperor Yan nodded and attacked with Chu Fengmian almost at the same time. It was almost impossible for Chu Fengmian to kill the three of them alone, but with Emperor Yan, it was not difficult to kill the three of them. Moreover, the Five Elements Saber Master was seriously injured and could be considered half a cripple. Now, only Ancestor Bai Luo and King Sunflower Sea needed to deal with him. Sword out. Sword light flashed in Chu Fengmian's hands as he attacked Ancestor Bai Luo with both swords. Compared to King Sunflower Sea, Chu Fengmian had a deeper grudge with Ancestor Bai Luo. Naturally, he wanted to kill Ancestor Bai Luo with his own hands. Sword light flashed and two sword chi slashed at Ancestor Bai Luo. Run! Ancestor Bai Luo turned around and ran without hesitation. His body turned into a wooden boat and he wanted to fly away. Still want to run? Today you will die under my sword. Chu Fengmian laughed loudly. His figure flashed, moving even faster than the wooden boat. In a flash, he arrived next to it. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian brandished his sword and slashed at the wooden boat. The boat was torn to pieces, and Forefather Bai Luo's body exploded in the air once more. This time, Chu Fengmian wouldn't give Ancestor Bai Luo a chance to rebuild his body. He suddenly grasped with his hand. Chu Fengmian grabbed a ball of Ancestor Bai Luo's blood essence and condensed it into a ball. Then, he activated the sky-devouring secret technique and swallowed it all. No, I am Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations. How can I die? Even if I die, I will take you down with me. Explode. 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 Ancestor Bai Luo's crazy roar came from the sky-devouring secret technique. His spiritual energy was wild and every ball of blood essence was burning. He wanted to self-destruct to take Chu Fengmian down with him. Chapter 1577. Nine Tribulations. Emperor Gu's self-detonation was powerful enough to shake heaven and earth and destroy a continent. Every drop of Forefather Biluo's blood was burning and expanding madly, determined to take Chu Fengmian down with him. You want to take me down with you? You don't have the qualifications to do so. Your blood essence will become my nourishment. Devour it all. Suppress. He uttered the word suppress. An ancient bronze cauldron flew out from Chu Fengmian's body. It pressed down on Forefather Biluo's body. The cauldron had 9 dragon heads, each vivid and lifelike, like a real dragon head. Divine 9 Dragons Cauldron. It ranked 11th among the world's 100 cauldrons. The Divine 9 Dragons Cauldron was a medicinal cauldron, but it had the power to suppress everything. Chu Fengmian deployed this suppressive artifact to suppress Forefather Biluo. Boom! Patriarch Jadersnail's madly burning essence blood was completely extinguished by this suppression. Then, the sky-devouring secret technique was activated, devouring thousands of drops of blood and turning them into pure spiritual energy. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian felt a stream of pure spiritual energy pouring into his body. No! Forefather Biluo roared madly. However, it was meaningless for him to roar crazily. The sky-devouring secret technique had crushed his consciousness. Soon after, the essence blood stopped resisting and was completely devoured, turning into Chu Fengmian's power. Good, the blood of a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu is indeed pure. The blood of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was purer than the spiritual energy contained in many ancient sacred herbs and ancient sacred pills. Chu Fengmian had devoured it with the sky-devouring secret technique. The aura on his body had become even more tyrannical. This was Forefather Biluo's empty ring. Chu Fengmian watched as the heaven-devouring secret magic devoured everything that belonged to Patriarch Jade Kong. The only thing left behind was his spatial ring, which was a dazzling collection of treasures that almost blinded him. Ancient saint elixirs, ancient saint herbs, heaven-grade spiritual weapons, countless materials, and even many rare items that had disappeared from this era were all piled up in the empty ring. Just the number of ancient sacred elixir pills alone numbered in the 100. It was simply a huge fortune, no less than a treasure trove. It seemed like Ancestor by Luo had obtained a lot of benefits in the 9 regions and had accumulated countless treasures in his spatial ring. Now that forefather Biluo had died at Chu Fengmian's hands, everything he had accumulated had gone to Chu Fengmian. Alright, let's kill a few more progenitor by Luo and I'll be able to convert more primordial battle dragon essence blood into dragon emperor essence blood. Chu Fengmian was extremely excited. In order to transform the primordial battle dragon blood essence into the dragon emperor blood essence, a large number of sacred elixirs and sacred elixirs would be required. For example, the bottle of martial progenitor blood essence could only refine 1,000 drops of it. It would take quite a lot of sacred herbs to refine a single drop. If Chu Fengmian were to accumulate it alone, it would be like pouring a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Now that Chu Fengmian had killed Ancestor by Luo and obtained his spatial ring, it was equivalent to making a fortune. It was much faster than Chu Fengmian slowly searching for treasures. Moreover, it was not just the treasures in the spatial ring. Ancestor by Luo's essence blood was also extremely pure spiritual energy. In the heaven-devouring secret technique, Ancestor by Luo's essence blood had been completely refined. It no longer had Ancestor by Luo's aura or the smell of blood. Instead, it had become the purest spiritual energy crystals. They had turned into spiritual stones, but their spiritual energy was purer than that of a saint-grade spiritual stone. Chu Fengmian devoured all the spiritual energy crystals in one go. At the same time, he activated his bloodline power. The ancient battle dragon's shadow appeared behind Chu Fengmian. Now, Chu Fengmian wanted to increase his strength and refine the Dragon Emperor Essence blood, which required a large amount of spiritual energy. After Chu Fengmian devoured the spiritual energy, it was devoured by the ancient battle dragon Essence blood. Then, a drop of golden blood flew out. It contained countless formations. It was a drop of Dragon Emperor Essence blood. The first drop, the second drop, the third drop. With sufficient spiritual energy, drops of Dragon Emperor Essence blood were condensed. After 50 drops of Dragon Emperor Essence blood were condensed, the power of Ancestor by Luo's Essence blood was completely devoured. 50 drops were not much, but it was enough to increase Chu Fengmian's strength by a lot. After devouring all of Ancestor by Luo's essence and blood, Chu Fengmian's body moved slightly. He looked in the direction of the 5 Elements Saber Master. The 5 Elements Saber Master was already seriously injured. He wanted to escape, but the remnant of the Supreme Sword formation was not something he could withstand. He could only be trapped in this secret chamber. Chu Fengmian, let me go. If you let me go, I promise I won't be your enemy. I won't tell anyone about what happened today. The 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster looked at Chu Fengmian and hurriedly said, "As long as you let me go, I can help you hide what happened today from the 3 factions. Do you think I'll believe you?" Chu Fengmian looked at the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster as if he was looking at an idiot. Regardless of whether the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster's words were true or not, Chu Fengmian had no intention of letting his enemy go. There was only one path for those who went against him, and that was death. Your essence blood will also become my strength. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and the sky-devouring secret techniques vortex immediately enveloped the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster. Boy, do you really think you're invincible? If you kill me, you'll be buried with me. There are half-step celestial realm experts in the Avalon of 5 Elements. You'll accompany me sooner or later. The 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster knew that he was going to die, but he did not beg for mercy. He shouted at Chu Fengmian, "I'll wait for the day you die. You talk too much." Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. He clenched his hand and crushed the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster. A ball of essence blood was injected into the sky-devouring secret technique and was mercilessly devoured. The essence blood of the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster was completely converted into pure spiritual energy and became a part of Chu Fengmian's strength. Another 9 tribulations Emperor Gu fell on the spot. On the other side, the battle between Emperor Yen and King Sunflower Ocean was also coming to an end. King Sunflower Ocean had burned 500 strands of the laws of heaven and earth in order to break the supreme sword formation. As a result, he was now incomparably weak. He was suppressed in all aspects during the battle with Emperor Yen. His physical body had already been destroyed 3 times. For Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations, even if his physical body was destroyed, he could still reform it in an instant. However, every time he reformed it, he would lose a certain amount of energy, and the next time he reformed it, he would lose even more energy. One after another, King Sunflower Ocean's strength became weaker and weaker. Finally, at the 4th time, his physical body was destroyed. King Sunflower Ocean did not dare to continue the battle with Emperor Yen. He turned into a ray of light and fled. Chapter 1578. But the Yen Emperor wouldn't give him the chance. A ring on his finger flickered and turned into a river of stars, pressing down on King Sunflower Sea. This ring was the opportunity the Yen Emperor obtained from the 9 mystic immortal sovereigns' abode. Although it wasn't the real 9 profound ring, it was still something the 9 mystic immortal sovereign personally refined. It was at the pinnacle of heaven-grade spirit artifact. As the river of stars fell, King Sunflower Sea's body was suppressed within the river of stars. His strength was constantly being ground away until his consciousness finally faded away. The Yen Emperor immediately devoured all of his essence blood. Forefather by Luo, 5 elements Saber Grandmaster, King Sunflower Sea, 3 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Now, all of them had fallen in this secret chamber. Although several 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had died in the 9 realms during the upheaval in the 9 realms, the 3 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had died. But now, 3 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had fallen at the same time. It was an earth-shattering event that would soon spread throughout the 9 realms. Let's go. Chu Fengmian glanced at the Yen Emperor and said. 2 figures flickered, passing through the light screen and leaving the abode. Not long after, another 9 tribulations Emperor Gu arrived. He frowned as he observed the stench of blood in the surroundings. Forefather by Luo called out. Where did he go? The 9 tribulations Emperor Gu observed for a moment, then suddenly gathered spiritual energy in his palm and struck forward. The spiritual energy began to condense in front of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu and turned into a water mirror. The water mirror was extremely blurry, but it was enough to vaguely show the scene of someone killing Forefather by Luo. Who is this person? How can he be so strong? Was Forefather by Luo killed by this person? The 9 tribulations Emperor Gu said in disbelief, as he watched the scene of Forefather by Luo's death in the water mirror. Forefather by Luo was a long-established 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. He was by no means weak, but he was killed just like that. What happened next left him dumbfounded. It wasn't just ancestor by Luo. In the next moment, the 5 elements Saber Grandmaster was killed as well. Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations could see that the 5 elements Saber Master had been forced into a desperate situation and was seriously injured. Next, the scene of King Sunflower Ocean's death appeared. He only killed the figures of the 3 people. It's the Yen Emperor? Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations couldn't help but frown. He recognized the person who had killed King Sunflower Sea. It was Emperor Yen. Although the Yen Emperor did not belong to the 3 major factions, he had a good relationship with them. Who would have thought that the Yen Emperor would kill King Sunflower Ocean? As for the person who had killed Forefather Jade Conch and 5 elements Saber Grandmaster, he couldn't immediately recognize him. Let's go and spread the news. The fact that this person is using the Dragon Clan's martial skill is definitely related to the Holy Dragon Mystery Dimension. Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations said in a deep voice. Soon after, he turned into a ray of light and left the light screen. On the other side, in a valley on the Crimson Continent, Chu Fengmian and the Yen Emperor were sitting cross-legged. Chu Fengmian and the Yen Emperor had joined forces to set up countless restrictions in the valley. As a result, other experts couldn't detect the presence of others in the valley. As for Chu Fengmian and the Yen Emperor, their eyes were tightly shut. Their auras were growing bit by bit. Chu Fengmian was refining the essence blood of the 5 elements Saber Grandmaster. The Yen Emperor was also refining the essence blood of King Sunflower Ocean. The essence blood of Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations was a perfect treasure that could be used to increase one's strength. The power in the essence blood of the 5 elements Saber Grandmaster was even greater than that of Forefather Jade Conch. Chu Fengmian slowly refined it. A large amount of spiritual energy poured into Chu Fengmian's body. Immediately after, the shadow of the ancient war dragon appeared behind Chu Fengmian. Like a living ancient war dragon, it opened its mouth and continuously devoured the spiritual energy. Waves of spiritual energy were devoured by the ancient war dragon essence blood and transformed bit by bit. At the moment when the essence blood of the 5 elements Saber Grandmaster was completely refined, the Dragon Emperor essence blood in Chu Fengmian's body had reached a total of 1,100 drop. Not bad. The essence blood of these 2 people is almost 1/10 of the martial ancestors' essence blood. Chu Fengmian slowly raised his head. There was some joy in his eyes. Now, as long as he could convert the ancient war dragon essence blood in his body into the Dragon Emperor essence blood, Chu Fengmian's strength would continue to increase. Currently, Chu Fengmian's realm was only that of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. If he could find an opportunity to break through to the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian's strength would increase by another step. When he faced the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, even if it was 1 against 3 or 4, Chu Fengmian would be able to defeat them. The moment Chu Fengmian opened his eyes, the Yen Emperor had also finished devouring the essence blood of the King of Sunflower Ocean. His aura had also become much stronger. The Yen Emperor had just stepped into the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu and needed to consolidate his realm. The essence blood of the King of Sunflower Ocean was a great supplement for him to consolidate his realm. I didn't expect Brother Chu's strength to be so powerful. This time, I owe Brother Chu a favor. The Yen Emperor opened his eyes and glanced at Chu Fengmian with a smile. This time, he had obtained great benefits from killing the King of Sunflower Ocean. The benefits of killing a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu were no less than the benefits of risking one's life to obtain a treasure in the Crimson Continent. This time, if Chu Fengmian hadn't forced the 3 into a desperate situation, the Yen Emperor wouldn't have been able to kill the King of Sunflower Ocean so easily. After all, although the Yen Emperor had the 9 Profound Ring, he had just broken through to the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. In terms of strength, he was still inferior to the King of Sunflower Ocean. With the 9 Profound Ring, the most he could do was draw. The only reason he could kill the King of Sunflower Ocean was because the King of Sunflower Ocean had been forced into a desperate situation and was incomparably weak. It's not a favor. If the Yen Emperor hadn't come this time, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to kill the other 2. Chu Fengmian heard the Yen Emperor's words and smiled. This time, the Yen Emperor dared to come at the right time. If not for the Yen Emperor, perhaps the 3 of them would have escaped. At that time, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have been able to get any benefit. Although the Yen Emperor didn't seem to have done much, he was the last straw that broke the camel's back. But this time, the Yen Emperor didn't come in vain. He killed the King of Sunflower Ocean and obtained the King of Sunflower Ocean's essence blood as well as the treasures in his empty ring. Of course, Chu Fengmian's gains were even greater. The essence blood of the 5 elements Saber Master and Forefather by Luo, as well as their empty rings were now in his hands. Chapter 1579. Their empty rings were filled with countless treasures they had obtained from the 9 regions. Although many of the items were not useful to warriors at Chu Fengmian's level, Chu Fengmian could still use them to cultivate the Sword Wei sect. If Chu Fengmian wanted to establish the Sword Wei sect, he naturally could not support it alone. It had to be developed. Just like the 7 major sects, or even the 4 major forces of the Daluo starfield, even if a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu or a half-step celestial realm expert fell, it would not be a big deal. Only such a force could continue to be passed down for tens of thousands of years. Brother Chu saved my disciple's life. This is a favor. However, I owe Brother Chu too much. I can only repay it in the future. Emperor Yen glanced at Chu Fengmian and said with a smile in his eyes. The biggest reason why Emperor Yen could break through and step into the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu was because Chu Fengmian gave him a Saint Origin pill through Qing Meng. Emperor Yen naturally knew about this Saint Origin pill. Chu Fengmian must have asked Qing Meng to give it to him. Although Chu Fengmian wanted to rope in Emperor Yen had not done anything yet, and Chu Fengmian had already given him a Saint Origin pill. This was a great benefit. This was a great favor. It also made Emperor Yen stand firmly on Chu Fengmian's side. Even if he was facing Emperor Gu of the other 3 major forces, he did not have any scruples and directly attacked. Of course, what made Emperor Yen most determined was Chu Fengmian's strength. Chu Fengmian's speed of improvement was beyond his imagination. When he first saw Chu Fengmian's strength was enough to compete with the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. But now, in less than a month's time, Chu Fengmian's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. When facing the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, he had the upper hand. With such a rapid improvement in strength, Chu Fengmian might even step into the half-step celestial realm in the future. There was even a great chance that he would step into the celestial realm. In the current era, it had been at least several hundred years since anyone had been able to step into the celestial realm. There were indeed some experts who were half a step into the celestial realm, but there was no news about the real celestial realm. Emperor Yen, I'm afraid your Yanzhou continent will be in great danger this time. Chu Fengmian glanced at the Yen Emperor and suddenly spoke. This time, the Yen Emperor had killed King Sunflower Ocean. This news couldn't be concealed at all. With a slight calculation, it would probably be known by the other 3 great forces. At that time, it would not be easy for the 3 forces to find trouble with the Yen Emperor. However, the Yanzhou continent, where the Yen Emperor was, would also be destroyed. Chu Fengmian reminded the Yen Emperor. Brother Chu, rest assured. I have already sent my 2 disciples back to the Yanzhou continent. The Yen Emperor smiled when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. I heard that Brother Chu has established a Sword Dao sect in the 9 regions. Can the disciples of the Yanzhou continent join it? Emperor Yen wants to join the Sword Dao sect. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed when he heard the Yen Emperor's words. Not bad. The Yen Emperor nodded and said. Now that he had chosen to stand on Chu Fengmian's side, he could no longer maintain his independence. The Sword Dao sect was now a new sect established by Chu Fengmian. It had no foundation. Once the Yen Emperor joined, he would definitely be in the upper echelon and have a prominent status. In the future, if Chu Fengmian really stepped into the half-step celestial realm, the Sword Dao sect would probably rise as well. God knows how many Emperor Gu would come to join the Sword Dao sect. The Yen Emperor came to join the Sword Dao sect because he had foresight. In the future, when Chu Fengmian became the overlord, he would definitely be a contributor. Good. Of course, I welcome the Yen Emperor to join. As long as you are a disciple of the Yanzhou continent, you will be a disciple of the Sword Dao sect. Chu Fengmian immediately agreed. It was definitely a good thing for the Yen Emperor and the Yanzhou continent to join the Sword Dao sect. Now that the Sword Dao sect had just been established, although there was a sect master like Chu Fengmian, the sect's strength was still too weak. Not to mention the 7 major sects of the 9 regions, even many of the first-rate forces and ancient families in the 9 regions were more tyrannical than the Sword Dao sect. Although the Yanzhou continent was only a 6th-class continent, it had a population of billions. The number of geniuses in the continent was many times more than the total number of geniuses in the northern region. With so many geniuses joining the Sword Dao sect, coupled with the countless cultivation techniques left behind by Chu Fengmian, the Sword Dao sect would not be long gone. It wouldn't be long before the Sword Dao sect rose to power and was not inferior to the 7 major sections. It might even surpass the 4 major forces of the Daluo star field in the future. This time, I must get a few more large-scale treasures in the Crimson Continent. Chu Fengmian arranged everything in his mind. His face was a little dignified. The core of the Sword Dao sect was Chu Fengmian. Once Chu Fengmian fell, the Sword Dao sect would collapse. What Chu Fengmian needed to do now was to increase his strength. Only with enough strength could he contend with the 7 major sects, the Avalon of 5 elements, the vast ocean city, and the Qilin mountain. Moreover, there were many higher-ups in the Sacred Dragon secret realm who were extremely hostile to Chu Fengmian, such as Emperor Gu. Once they came out of seclusion, they would definitely come to deal with Chu Fengmian. Taking advantage of the opening of countless treasures in the Crimson Continent, Chu Fengmian had to get a few more large-scale treasures to increase his strength. The benefits he gained from the Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestors' cave abode also made Chu Fengmian realize how great the opportunities were in this large-scale treasure trove. It was no wonder that countless Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations went crazy when they came across a large-scale treasure trove. They wanted to fight and kill for it. By the way, Brother Chu, do you know about the recent appearance of an extreme immortal weapon in the Crimson Continent? The Yen Emperor suddenly glanced at Chu Fengmian and asked, "News of the appearance of an extreme immortal weapon? What's going on?" Chu Fengmian was extremely excited when he heard the Yen Emperor's words, but his expression did not change. The appearance of an extreme immortal weapon was also the reason why so many experts had come to the 9 domains in the first place. Chu Fengmian also knew that the extreme immortal weapon was the fragment of the Emperor Jar. Among the people Chu Fengmian had met previously, Yen Jun had obtained a fragment of the Emperor Jar. He had also been attracted by the impending appearance of the fragment of the Emperor Jar in the 9 domains. Obtaining just one fragment of the Emperor Jar would be enough to increase the power of the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's hands by countless times. Chu Fengmian already had 5 fragments of the Emperor Jar. If he could obtain 4 more fragments, he would be able to restore the Emperor Jar to its original state. With a complete extreme immortal weapon, Chu Fengmian would be able to sweep through everything. It seems that Brother Chu still doesn't know that almost all the experts in the Crimson Continent and the entire bottomless ruined sky have been attracted by a huge treasure trove. The Yen Emperor spoke again while Chu Fengmian was thinking. Chapter 1580. A gigantic treasure? Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he heard Emperor Yan's words. In this Crimson Continent, many of the so-called large treasures were the remains of ancient sects or treasures left behind by Heaven Realm powerhouses like Martial Ancestor Tyrannical Lion. But this gigantic treasure, could it be a Heaven Realm cave dwelling? No, even a Heaven Realm cave dwelling shouldn't cause such a huge commotion. Chu Fengmian was a little puzzled. All the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu of the Crimson Continent had gathered here to fight for this treasure. What kind of person did this treasure belong to? Brother Chu, this isn't the place to talk. Let's walk and I'll tell you about this treasure. Emperor Yen glanced at Chu Fengmian and didn't explain. Instead, there was a hint of anxiety in his eyes. Miss Qing Meng has also gone. She should have arrived by now. Senior sister has also come to the 9 territories. Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he heard Emperor Yan's words. It seemed that the upheaval of the 9 territories had indeed spread throughout the entire Daluo star field. Qing Meng couldn't help but come. Let's go. His figure flashed and turned into a streak of light that flew directly into the sky. Chu Fengmian also knew that the opening of the treasure couldn't be delayed. He had to seize the opportunity before the treasure was opened to obtain the greatest benefits. For example, martial ancestor tyrannical lion's cave dwelling. Because Chu Fengmian had seized the opportunity, he had obtained the greatest harvest. 2 streaks of light shuttled through the Crimson Continent. This time, Chu Fengmian also noticed that the number of cultivators on the Crimson Continent seemed to have decreased by a lot, and the few streaks of light that passed by were flying in the same direction as Chu Fengmian. They seemed to be heading to the same destination. In this Crimson Continent, a total of 90% of the cultivators and demon gods seemed to be gathering in one place. Brother Chu, do you know about the 9th Order Immortal? Emperor Yen, who was leading the way, suddenly turned his head and asked Chu Fengmian. I know. Chu Fengmian nodded. The 9th Order Immortal was recorded in many ancient books. Although there were no Heaven Realm powerhouses in this era, some ancient books read it. However, many people still knew about this from ancient books. Although Chu Fengmian was powerful, he had only stepped into the Emperor realm less than a year ago. So, he didn't know many secrets that he didn't know. An emperor had been famous for a long time, so he knew more than Chu Fengmian Emperor of him. The treasure vault that is about to be opened is said to be the cave of an immortal emperor. It's also the place where that immortal emperor died. The Yen Emperor suddenly said a shocking piece of news. Immortal Emperor's cave dwelling? The Immortal's Emperor's dwelling. Emperor Yan's Emperor. Emperor Emperor's Emperor. Even in the most prosperous era, immortal emperors were absolute overlords. What was about to be opened was actually an immortal emperor's cave. Moreover, it was the place where an immortal emperor had fallen. An immortal emperor was in existence that could crush the current 9 domains with a wave of his finger. Chu Fengmian asked in disbelief. The news was so shocking that Chu Fengmian couldn't believe it. Most of the news is true. Even if it's not the Immortal's Emperor Yan's dwelling, the treasure is bigger than any of the treasures opened in the End Ruins Heaven. Emperor Yen replied. Emperor Yen had only heard of the Immortal's Emperor Yen. Heaven realm powerhouses were beyond their reach. Not to mention the Immortal Emperor, who stood at the top of the Immortals. However, judging from the might of this treasure trove that was about to be opened, it was definitely the largest treasure trove to be opened since the upheaval in the 9 regions. Even if it wasn't the Immortal's Emperor Yan's dwelling, such a treasure was worth fighting for. If it's really the Immortal's Emperor Yen, whoever can get the treasure inside will reach the sky in a single bound. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. The Immortal's Emperor Yan's dwelling. He might even have the Immortal's Emperor Yan's spirit artifact with him. The Immortal's Emperor Yan's spirit artifact and Immortal Emperor Yan's spirit artifact were all priceless treasures. For example, Chu Fengmian had obtained the bronze heavenly demon's skeleton, which was enough to cultivate a half-step immortal body. The bronze heavenly demon was also an immortal emperor, or rather, a demon emperor. If one could obtain the immortal emperor's skeleton, the benefits would be no less than the bronze heavenly demon's skeleton. Moreover, even something casually left behind by an immortal emperor was enough to drive countless 9 tribulations Emperor Gu crazy. It's easier said than done to obtain the immortal emperor's treasure. I'm afraid there are more than 109 tribulations Emperor Gu this time. Emperor Yen shook his head at Chu Fengmian's words. All the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu in the End Ruins Heaven had rushed over for the Immortal's Cave. Each faction had a dozen 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. In comparison, Chu Fengmian's faction was still too weak. Even if he included Qing Meng, there were only 3 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. 3 9 tribulations Emperor Gu were considered a powerful faction even in the Daluo star field. However, compared to the Avalon of 5 elements and Qi Linshan, 3 9 tribulations Emperor Gu were not enough. It was even possible that a half-step celestial realm expert would be involved this time. A half-step celestial realm expert was a completely different realm from the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. He was already half a step into the celestial realm and was invincible. It's already a great opportunity if we can get 1 or 2 benefits from it this time, Emperor Yin said. Emperor Yin said. He was not greedy. If it's really the immortal Emperor's cave, then no matter what, I have to give it a try. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with a hint of determination. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian was taken aback. His expression shook as a strange light flashed in his eyes. Within his body, a spiritual artifact had been awakened. The Emperor Jar. The Emperor Jar, which had been hidden in Chu Fengmian's body all this time, had been awakened. It was pointing Chu Fengmian in a certain direction. The fragments of the Emperor Jar have appeared. Chu Fengmian was suddenly excited. He had returned to the 9 regions for one reason, to continue searching for the fragments of the Emperor Jar. Of the 9 fragments of the Emperor Jar, Chu Fengmian had obtained 5 of them. The last 4 fragments would be enough to reshape the Emperor Jar. By then, Chu Fengmian would have a true ultimate immortal weapon in his hands. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.